It is 3 in the morning. The world outside is hushed, draped in a deep and silent blue. But inside this room, inside your own mind, there is no peace. The gentle tick of a clock on the wall seems to echo the frantic rhythm of your own heart. Each sound a reminder of the precious sleep that will not come. A chaotic slideshow of thoughts projects itself onto the darkness. An email you should have answered. A bill that needs to be paid. A conversation that ended awkwardly. The relentless pressure to be more, to do more, to have more. These thoughts are not just thoughts. They are ghosts, circling endlessly, building the walls of an invisible prison from which there seems to be no escape. You are not just tired, you are profoundly weary, bone-deep tired of the constant effort it takes just to keep your head above water. This experience, this quiet desperation in the lonely hours of the night, is not a personal failure. It is the signature ailment of our time. We live in a world that promises connection at the speed of light, yet we feel profoundly disconnected, even from ourselves. We are told that happiness is just one more purchase away, one more promotion, one more milestone achieved. Yet with every goal we reach, the goalposts seem to move, and a familiar, hollow ache returns. This is the great paradox of modern life, a long, dark night of the soul, where the light of genuine contentment feels like a distant, unreachable star. We have mastered the outer world, building cities of glass and steel and networks that span the globe. But our inner world often remains a wild, untamed wilderness, ruled by fear and anxiety. But what if there was another way? What if, for thousands of years, there has existed a map for this very wilderness? Not a religion that demands blind faith, but a practical, profound science of the mind, a set of tools designed to navigate the complex terrain of human consciousness. What if the peace you are searching for is not something you need to acquire from the outside, but something that already exists within you, waiting to be uncovered? This is the promise of Buddhist wisdom. It offers a lantern, a steady flame to carry into the darkest corners of your experience, not to banish the darkness, but to understand it. It suggests that the way out of the prison is not to fight against the walls, but to realize that the door has been open all along. This journey is an invitation to gently turn your attention inward and to begin the quiet, courageous work of finding the light that has always been there, waiting patiently for your return. To begin our journey, we must first be willing to sit in the dark. We must be willing to name the very thing we spend most of our lives trying to avoid, to outrun, to distract ourselves from. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this pervasive sense of unease is called dukkha. Now, the common translation for dukkha is suffering. But this word is heavy and perhaps misleading. It brings to mind images of intense agony, tragedy, and despair. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far broader, more subtle, and infinitely more relevant to our everyday lives. Think of it less as a constant, screaming pain, and more as a fundamental unsatisfactoriness. It is the pebble in your shoe that you've grown so used to. You've almost forgotten it's there, yet it still affects the way you walk. It is the quiet hum of a refrigerator in an otherwise silent house, a background noise of anxiety that you only notice when it suddenly stops. It is the feeling that no matter what you achieve, no matter how much you acquire, something is still not quite right. It is the inherent friction of existence. To acknowledge dukkha is not to be a pessimist. It is to be a realist. It is the first step any physician must take to look at the patient and make an honest diagnosis. Without an accurate diagnosis, any attempt at a cure is just guesswork, a shot in the dark. The Buddha, in his role as the great physician of the mind, invited us to have the immense courage to simply look at our own experience without flinching and to acknowledge this fundamental truth. To understand it more clearly, we can look at dukkha in three distinct flavors or textures. The first is the most obvious, the dukkha of painful experiences, or dukkha. This is the raw, undeniable pain that is an inescapable part of having a human body and a human heart. It is the searing pain of a migraine, the chronic ache of an aging back, the sudden shock of an injury. It is the grief that hollows you out when you lose someone you love. It is the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of failure, the bitter taste of disappointment. This form of suffering needs little explanation because we all know it intimately. No life is exempt from it. We can build walls of wealth and comfort, but sickness, old age, and death are universal visitors that knock on every door. Our modern world often encourages us to deny this reality, to put on a brave face, to medicate or distract ourselves from any feeling of discomfort. But the Buddhist path suggests the opposite. It invites us to acknowledge this pain, to be present with it, to see it for what it is, a natural, albeit difficult, part of the human condition. In doing so, we stop wasting enormous energy in the futile project of trying to construct a life free from all pain, and instead begin to develop the resilience to meet pain with wisdom and grace. The second flavor is more subtle and perhaps even more pervasive in our modern culture. It is the dukkha of change, or viparinama dukkha. This is the suffering that arises from the fact that nothing lasts. Even our moments of happiness are fragile and fleeting. Think of the joy of getting a new car, the shine, the smell, the thrill of driving it off the lot. It brings a genuine feeling of happiness. But weeks or months later, that thrill has faded. The car is now just a mode of transportation. It gets dirty, it gets scratched, it requires maintenance. The happiness it provided was temporary, conditional. The same is true for a perfect vacation, a wonderful meal, or a passionate romance. We grasp onto these pleasant experiences, desperately trying to make them permanent, and in that very act of grasping, we create suffering for ourselves. The pleasure itself becomes laced with the subtle fear of its own ending. We are not fully present for the beautiful sunset because a part of our mind is already mourning the fact that it will soon be over. We are so afraid of losing what we have that we can never truly enjoy having it. This is the inherent stress of living in a world of impermanence. It is like trying to build a castle on the sand. We may create something beautiful, but we are in a constant state of anxiety, knowing the tide will inevitably come in. Our consumer culture is built entirely on this principle. It constantly dangles the promise of lasting happiness through the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next experience, knowing full well that the satisfaction will be temporary, thus ensuring we remain caught in a perpetual cycle of wanting, getting, and wanting again. Viparinama dukkha is the quiet heartbreak of impermanence, the suffering born not from pain, but from the inability of pleasure to ever fully satisfy our deepest longing for security. The third and most profound flavor of dukkha is the dukkha of conditioned states, or sankhara dukkha. This is the deepest level of unsatisfactoriness, the background hum of anxiety that we spoke of earlier. It is a suffering that arises simply from the nature of having a self or an ego that is constructed and dependent on constantly changing conditions. It is the fundamental insecurity of being a contingent being. Think about the sheer amount of energy it takes simply to be you every day. You have to maintain your body, your reputation, your relationships, your career, your beliefs, your story. This self that we work so hard to protect is not a solid, independent entity. It is a complex, fragile assembly of physical sensations, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, all of which are in a constant state of flux. Our very existence is conditional, dependent on air, food, water, the stability of our society, the goodwill of others. Sankhara dukkha is the subtle, underlying stress that comes from this radical dependency. It is the feeling of being vulnerable in a world we cannot control. It is the existential angst that can surface in the quietest moments. The feeling that we are just one small, fragile being in a vast, indifferent universe. It is the friction of being a composite, temporary phenomenon in a world of other composite, temporary phenomena. This is not a flaw in you. It is the very nature of existence as we experience it. It is the ultimate pebble in the shoe, the foundational dis-ease that gives rise to so many of our other fears and anxieties. To speak of these things so plainly can feel heavy, even morose, but it is crucial to remember the frame. This is not a philosophy of despair. It is a diagnosis offered with the deepest compassion. It is an act of radical truth-telling. By refusing to look away, we take the first step toward liberation. There is a famous story that illustrates this with beautiful simplicity. A young woman named Kisa Gotami was driven to madness by grief after her only child died. Clutching the body of her son, she went from house to house, desperately seeking medicine that could bring him back to life. Some mocked her, others pitied her, until one wise man directed her to the Buddha. The Buddha listened to her with great compassion and told her, "There is only one thing that can help you. Go into the city and bring me back a single mustard seed from any house where no one has ever died." Hopeful, Kisa Gotami went from door to door. At each house, the people were willing to give her a mustard seed, but when she asked if anyone in their family had ever died, the answer was always the same. One person had lost a husband, another a child, another a parent. House after house, she heard stories of loss and sorrow. Slowly, as the sun began to set, a profound realization dawned on her. Her own unbearable grief was not a unique curse. It was a shared human experience. Death was not an enemy that had singled her out. It was a universal truth. In that moment, her frantic, personal suffering transformed into a deep, compassionate understanding of the nature of life itself. She returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with a quiet, awakened heart. She had seen the truth of dukkha, not as an intellectual concept, but as a lived reality, and in seeing it, she had taken the first step on the path to peace. This is the task that is before us now, to be our own Kisa Gotami, to look honestly at our own lives, at our own anxieties, our losses, our fleeting joys, and our deep-seated insecurities, to acknowledge that this friction, this dukkha, is not a sign that we are broken or that life has failed us. It is simply the nature of the journey. This acknowledgement is not the end of the story. It is the necessary beginning. It is the strong, solid ground upon which we can finally begin to build a house of true and lasting peace. It clears away the fog of denial and allows us to ask the next and most vital question: if this is the condition, what then is its cause? Having diagnosed the fundamental dis-ease of existence, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness we call dukkha, the great physician of the mind does not leave us in a state of despair. Instead, he points directly to the cause, offering the second noble truth, a revelation that is both startling in its simplicity and profound in its implications. The origin of our suffering, he explained, is an insatiable thirst, a relentless craving. In the Pali language, this is called tanha. While we often translate it as craving or desire, the image of thirst is perhaps more powerful. It is a deep, primal urge, a desperate longing that, no matter how much we drink, is never truly quenched. This thirst is the engine of our restlessness. It is the invisible force that propels us through life, constantly seeking something outside of ourselves to make us feel whole, complete, and secure. It is the deep conviction that if we could just get, achieve, or experience the right thing, or get rid of the wrong thing, our suffering would end. This tanha is not a single, monolithic force. It manifests in our lives in three distinct, yet deeply interwoven, streams, each one carving a channel of unease through our psyche. Recognizing these streams in our own experience is the key to understanding the mechanism of our own unhappiness. The first and most familiar stream is the thirst for sensual pleasures, kama-tanha. This is the craving for experiences that delight our six senses: the sight of beauty, the sound of pleasing music, the smell of wonderful aromas, the taste of delicious food, the touch of comfort, and the stimulation of pleasant thoughts and ideas. On the surface, there is nothing wrong with enjoying these things. The world is full of beauty and pleasure, and to appreciate it is a part of being alive. The problem, the root of dukkha, does not lie in the pleasure itself, but in our relationship to it. It lies in the clinging, the attachment, the mistaken belief that these fleeting experiences can provide lasting happiness. Our entire modern economy is a grand temple built to the god of kama-tanha. Advertisements whisper promises of fulfillment through a new phone, a faster car, a more luxurious vacation. Social media feeds become a gallery of curated pleasures, showcasing perfect meals, exotic travels, and beautiful bodies, all designed to trigger our own craving for similar experiences. We become addicts of the dopamine hit, the small burst of pleasure that comes from a new purchase, a notification, a like on a photo, or the next episode in a series we are binge watching. We chase these sensations relentlessly, believing they are the antidote to our underlying emptiness. But each pleasure is like a sip of salt water to a thirsty man. It provides a momentary illusion of relief, but ultimately, it only makes the thirst stronger. The new gadget becomes old. The taste of the meal fades. The vacation ends. And when the pleasurable stimulus is gone, we are left with the familiar ache of its absence, a hollowness that immediately sends us hunting for the next fix. We are caught on a hedonic treadmill, running faster and faster, yet remaining in the exact same place of fundamental dissatisfaction, forever chasing a horizon that recedes as we approach it. The second stream of thirst runs deeper and is more intimately tied to our sense of self. It is the craving to be, the thirst for existence, known as bhava-tanha. This is not just the desire for pleasant things. It is the desire to become someone. It is the deep, desperate need to construct, solidify, and perpetuate a stable and impressive identity. It is the craving to be seen as successful, smart, attractive, important, righteous, or spiritually advanced. This is the thirst that fuels ambition, the relentless drive to climb the ladder, to accumulate titles, wealth, and accolades, not just for the comfort they bring, but for what they say about who we are. It is the profound anxiety that underlies our social interactions, the fear of being judged, of being seen as a failure, of being insignificant. In our digital age, bhava-tanha has found its ultimate playground. We meticulously curate our online personas, presenting a highlight reel of our lives, carefully filtered and edited to project an image of happiness and success. We chase followers and validation, our sense of self-worth becoming dangerously entangled with the opinions of strangers. We compare our messy, behind-the-scenes reality with the polished public performances of others, inevitably feeling that we are falling short. This craving to be a solid, permanent, and admirable self is a source of immense stress. It forces us to wear masks, to defend our opinions as if they were extensions of our very being, and to live in constant fear that the fragile facade we have constructed might one day crumble, revealing the ordinary, vulnerable human being underneath. It is the exhausting project of trying to turn a fluid processor life into a fixed and static monument. The third stream of thirst is the dark twin of the second. It is the craving for non-existence, vibhavatana. This is the violent urge to annihilate what is unpleasant. If bhavatana is the pull toward what we want, vibhavatana is the push away from what we don't want. It is the fierce desire for a painful feeling, a difficult situation, or an irritating person to simply cease to exist. This thirst is the root of anger, hatred, and aversion. When we feel threatened or frustrated, vibhavatanha rises up as the desire to destroy the source of our discomfort. We lash out with sharp words. We slam doors. We entertain violent fantasies. It can also manifest as a deep-seated self-hatred, a desire to annihilate the parts of ourselves that we find shameful or weak. In its most extreme form, it can become a craving for the complete cessation of our own existence, a belief that only through oblivion can we find release from pain. But this desire for annihilation is not a solution. It is simply another form of desperate clinging. It is the other side of the same coin. Whether we are desperately grasping for pleasure and existence, or desperately pushing away pain and non-existence, we are still caught in the same frantic cycle of reactivity. We are still defining our peace in relation to external conditions, making our inner well-being a hostage to the ever-shifting circumstances of the world. Peace can never be found by winning this war of pushing and pulling. It can only be found when we lay down our weapons. There is a simple yet powerful story told in Asia about how to trap a monkey. A hunter drills a small hole in a coconut, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through. He empties the coconut, places some sweet rice inside, and chains the coconut to a tree. A monkey, attracted by the smell, comes along, slips its hand into the coconut, and grasps the rice. When it tries to pull its hand out, the clenched fist is now too large to pass back through the hole. The monkey shrieks and pulls, growing more and more frantic, but it cannot get free. The hunter can then simply walk up and capture it. At any moment, the monkey could be free. All it has to do is open its hand and let go of the rice. But its craving, its tanha, is so strong that it cannot bring itself to release the prize. It is trapped not by the coconut, nor by the hunter, but by its own clinging mind. We are this monkey. The world presents us with countless coconuts' promises of pleasure, security, and identity. We reach in and grasp them tightly, believing they are the source of our happiness. In doing so, we clench our minds into a fist of desire and find ourselves trapped, bound to a cycle of frustration and anxiety. Freedom is always available. It is as close as our own mind. It lies in the simple, yet profoundly difficult, act of unclenching our fist, of letting go. So we see that the source of our disease is not the world itself. It is not our boss, our partner, our financial situation, or our health. These are merely conditions. The true source of the fire is the fuel we keep pouring onto it, our own relentless thirst. This realization is incredibly empowering. If the cause of our suffering were external, we would be helpless victims forever at the mercy of a chaotic world. But because the cause is internal, our own craving mind, the solution is also within our grasp. We are not fated to be trapped forever. We hold the key to our own cage. But this raises a crucial question. If letting go is the key to freedom, why do we hold on so tightly? If the rice in our fist is the very thing that keeps us bound, why is opening our hand the hardest thing in the world to do? The answer lies in our fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of the rice itself and of the world it comes from. We cling so desperately because we believe that what we hold is solid, reliable, and capable of giving us the lasting security we seek. To loosen our grip, we must first investigate the true nature of things. We have seen how our own insatiable thirst, our tanha, is the fuel for the fire of our discontent. We grasp and we cling, we push and we pull, all in a desperate attempt to secure a lasting state of happiness and peace. This leads us to a fundamental question. Why is our grip so tight? We hold on because we operate under a profound illusion, the silent, unexamined assumption that the objects of our desire, they possessions, people, or states of mind, are solid, stable, and permanent. We believe that if we can just arrange them correctly, they will stay put, forming a reliable foundation for our happiness. It is this core belief that Buddhist wisdom seeks to dismantle with its third great insight into the nature of reality. This is the teaching of anicca, or impermanence. This is not a dark or nihilistic doctrine designed to plunge us into despair. On the contrary, it is presented as a master key, a truth so powerful and liberating that, once fully understood, it can unlock the chains of our own making. Anicca is the simple, radical, and observable fact that everything changes. Everything is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is permanent. This is not a belief to be adopted, but a law of nature to be observed, as fundamental and inescapable as gravity. To resist it is to declare war on reality itself, a war we are destined to lose. To understand it, and to learn to live in harmony with it, is to find a peace that is not dependent on things staying the same. Let us begin by observing anicca in the world around us and in our own bodies. We may look at a mountain and perceive it as a symbol of permanence, a solid, unchanging monolith. But in the grand sweep of geological time, that mountain is a dynamic process. It was pushed up by tectonic forces, and it is being constantly, imperceptibly eroded by wind and rain. One day, it will be dust. The stars we see in the night sky seem eternal, but they too are burning through their fuel, destined to collapse and die. Everything you can see, from the grandest galaxy to the smallest grain of sand, is part of a dynamic, unfolding dance of arising and passing away. This same process is happening, moment by moment, within your own body. You are not the same physical person you were 10 years ago, or even 1 year ago. Billions of your cells have died and been replaced. Your skin, your bones, your organs are in a constant state of renewal and decay. Society teaches us to fight this process, to view aging as a failure. We spend fortunes on products and procedures designed to hide the evidence of time's passage, to cling to the image of a younger self. This resistance is a potent source of suffering. Every new wrinkle, every grey hair is seen as a defeat. But from the perspective of anicca, this is simply the natural, lawful, and even beautiful unfolding of life. Your body is not a static object. It is a river of change. To accept this is to release an immense burden of anxiety and to begin to inhabit your own skin with a sense of grace and acceptance, no matter its age or condition. Even more crucial to our mental well-being, is the observation of anicca in our inner world, the landscape of our own minds. Our thoughts, feelings, and emotions are perhaps the most vivid examples of impermanence we can experience. Think of your mind as a vast, open sky. Feelings and thoughts are like weather patterns that move through it. One moment, a dark storm cloud of anger may gather. It may feel all-consuming, powerful, and permanent. We identify with it completely, saying, "I am angry." We are convinced that the storm is the sky. But if we can learn to simply watch it, without feeding it, and without trying to force it away, we will notice that it, too, changes. The intensity lessens, the dark clouds begin to break apart, and eventually the storm passes, revealing the clear, open sky that was there all along. The same is true for a thick fog of sadness, a sudden shower of anxiety, or a brilliant, sunny spell of joy. None of these states are permanent. They arise due to certain conditions. They remain for a time, and they cease when those conditions change. The suffering arises when we cling to the pleasant states and violently resist the unpleasant ones. We desperately try to hold on to happiness, which creates anxiety, and we desperately try to push away sadness, which creates exhaustion and despair. The practice of mindfulness is the art of learning to sit with the weather of the mind. It is the cultivation of the ability to acknowledge the presence of a strong emotion without becoming that emotion. You can feel anger without being an angry person. You can feel sadness without being a sad person. By observing the fleeting, transient nature of our own mental states, we rob them of their tyrannical power. They are no longer solid, terrifying entities, but simply energy in motion, passing through the vast and accommodating space of our awareness. This law of change governs our relationships and life circumstances just as absolutely. We fall in love and wish for that initial, blissful state to last forever. But relationships, if they are alive, must change. People grow, their needs evolve, and the dynamic between them shifts. To cling to a past version of a relationship is to suffocate its present life. We get a job we love and hope for a lifetime of security, but companies restructure, industries evolve, and our own passions may shift. We build a life that feels stable, and then a global pandemic, a financial crisis, or a personal loss can upend everything in an instant. Our instinct is to view this change as a betrayal, a cosmic injustice. We suffer because reality is not conforming to our blueprint of how things should be. But the wisdom of anicca invites a different perspective. It teaches us that because everything is temporary, every moment is infinitely precious. Knowing that a happy time will not last forever allows us to savor it more fully, to be more present for it, instead of taking it for granted. And knowing that a difficult time will also not last forever gives us the strength and resilience to endure it. It is the ultimate consolation, a reminder that this, too, shall pass. It encourages us to hold our lives, our relationships, and our plans with an open hand, rather than a clenched fist. In this openness, there is flexibility, adaptability, and a profound sense of peace that is not shattered by the inevitable twists and turns of life. There is a beautiful Zen story that perfectly illustrates this wisdom. A great master had a favorite teacup. It was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, delicate and exquisitely beautiful. He treasured it and used it every day. When he would speak to his students, he would often hold the teacup and say, "To me, this cup is already broken. Because I know its nature is to one day be broken, I can enjoy it with complete freedom and appreciate its beauty in every moment." His students were puzzled by this strange statement. Years later, an attendant accidentally dropped the teacup, and it shattered into 100 pieces on the floor. The attendant was terrified, but the master remained perfectly calm. He simply looked down and said, "Ah, yes, now it is broken." His peace was not disturbed because he had never been under the illusion of the cup's permanence. He had not been clinging to a future where the cup would last forever. By embracing its impermanence from the very beginning, he was free from the suffering of its eventual loss. He was free to simply love it for what it was, while it was. This is the freedom that the understanding of anicca offers us. It is the freedom to love our lives, our world, and the people in it, without the paralyzing fear of loss. Therefore, anicca is not a depressing verdict on the futility of life. It is the very rhythm of life itself. It is the pulse of the cosmos, the breath of existence. To fight against it is as futile as trying to command the sun not to set. We cause ourselves immense and unnecessary pain by building our mental and emotional homes on the shifting sands of permanence. The wisdom of Buddhism does not ask us to stop the river from flowing. It invites us to stop trying to stand still in the middle of it. It asks us to learn how to build a raft, to become graceful navigators of the currents of change. Once we begin to truly see and accept the ceaseless flow of impermanence in everything around us and everything within us, a profound question naturally arises. If my body is changing, my thoughts are changing, my feelings are changing, and all of my life circumstances are changing, then who is it that is watching all of this? What is this I that perceives this constant flux? Is this observer the one solid, unchanging rock in the middle of the rushing river? Or is it, too, part of the flow? This vital inquiry leads us directly to the heart of the Buddhist path, to its most challenging and liberating teaching. We have journeyed into the heart of reality and witnessed its first great law, anicca, the universal truth of impermanence. We have seen that everything we can perceive, from the mountains to our own bodies to our very thoughts, is in a state of constant, ceaseless flow. This revelation naturally leads us to the most profound and personal inquiry of all. Amidst this torrent of change, who is the one watching? What is this I that feels the pain, that chases the pleasure, that witnesses the stream of life? We instinctively feel that there is a solid, continuous self at our core, an unchanging entity that has been with us since birth. It's the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, the CEO in the headquarters of our mind. The next stage of our journey asks us to have the courage to turn the full light of our attention onto this very sense of self. Here we encounter the most challenging, counterintuitive, and ultimately, the most liberating teaching of the Buddhist path, the truth of anatta, or not, self. Let this not be a cause for alarm. The teaching of anatta does not claim that you do not exist. It claims that you do not exist as a separate, permanent, independent entity. It suggests that this I we hold so dear is not a solid thing, but a beautiful, intricate, and ultimately illusory process. Let us undertake this investigation together, not as an intellectual exercise, but as a deep, experiential inquiry. Let us try to find this self we are so certain of. First, is this I your body? It seems plausible. We point to our chest and say me, but as we have seen, the body is a river of impermanence. Cells are born and die. It ages. It gets sick. It changes constantly. If you lose a limb, are you any less you? If your body is completely renewed at the cellular level every 7 to 10 years, which version is the real you? The body is clearly something we have, a precious vehicle we inhabit, but it cannot be what we are. It is a process, not a permanent entity. So, Perhaps the self is to be found in the mind. Let's look there. Is the I your feelings? Consider the vast spectrum of emotions that pass through you in a single day. A flicker of irritation in traffic, a wave of warmth from a kind word, a pang of anxiety about the future, a moment of simple contentment. Feelings are as fickle and transient as the weather. They arise and pass away. If you were your feelings, yourself would be born and die 1,000 times a day. You would cease to exist when you felt numb and be a different person when you felt happy versus when you felt sad. So, the I cannot be our feelings. They are visitors, not the owner of the house. Well then, is the I your thoughts? This is a more convincing candidate. We identify deeply with our inner monologue, our opinions, our beliefs, and our plans. But take a moment to simply watch your thoughts. Where do they come from? They seem to arise from nowhere, unbidden. They are often contradictory, chaotic, and repetitive. Your opinions change as you gather new experiences. A belief you held dear 10 years ago may seem foolish to you now. If you were your thoughts, which thought would be the real you? The kind thought or the angry one? The brilliant insight or the mundane grocery list? Thoughts are events in the mind. They are mental formations, not the stable identity of a self. They are clouds passing through the sky of awareness. Let's go one level deeper. Perhaps the I is the awareness itself, the consciousness that witnesses the body, the feelings, and the thoughts. This feels very close. This is the silent observer, the screen upon which the movie of life plays. But Buddhist investigation asks us to look even closer. Is this consciousness a standalone thing? Or is it, too, dependent on conditions? Seeing consciousness arises only when there is an I and a visible object. Hearing consciousness arises only when there is an ear and a sound. The awareness itself is not a monolithic entity. It is a series of discrete moments of consciousness, each one arising in dependence on an object. It is not a continuous, independent watcher, but a flickering process, a series of cognitive events. It, too, is part of the flow. So, where does this leave us? We have looked for a solid, separate, permanent self in the body, in our feelings, in our thoughts, and even in consciousness itself, and we cannot find one. This is the heart of the Anatta teaching. The self we so cherish is not a thing, but a construct. It is a story that the mind creates to make sense of the torrent of experience. It is like a whirlpool in a river. The whirlpool has a recognizable shape and form for a time, but it has no independent existence apart from the river. It is nothing but the river itself, swirling in a particular pattern. In the same way, the self is a pattern of thoughts, feelings, memories, and sensations. It is a useful convention, a name we give to this particular psychophysical process to help us navigate the world. We need to say, I am hungry, or I will meet you tomorrow. But the danger, the root of dukkha, lies in mistaking the conventional label for an ultimate reality. We fall in love with the story of me, and then we live in mortal fear of anything that threatens that story. This realization is the key to profound freedom. When you loosen your grip on the idea of a solid self, the whole landscape of your anxiety begins to change. Consider the fear of criticism or insults. This fear comes from the belief that there is a solid me that needs to be defended. When someone criticizes you, it feels like an attack on your very being. But if you see the self as a fluid process, the criticism is no longer a personal attack. It is simply information, feedback about a temporary pattern of thoughts and actions. It may be useful or it may not, but it doesn't threaten your core existence, because there is no solid core to threaten. Consider the fear of failure. We are terrified of failure because it feels like a final verdict on the worth of ourself. But from the anatta perspective, there is no one there to be a failure. There are only actions and results, processes and outcomes. Failure becomes a learning experience, a valuable piece of data for the next action, not a permanent stain on a non-existent entity. The immense, crushing weight of having to protect, promote, and perfect this fragile ego begins to lift. The constant tension of self-consciousness eases. We become less defensive, more open, more spontaneous, and paradoxically, more authentically ourselves, because we are no longer trapped by the prison of a rigid self-concept. There is a celebrated dialogue from ancient Buddhist texts that makes this point with elegant clarity. The Greek king Melinda, a man of great intellect, approached the Buddhist sage Nagasena to challenge him on this very teaching. The king asked, "What is your name, venerable sir?" The sage replied, "I am known as Nagasena, your majesty, but this is just a name, a designation. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king was amused and skeptical. He gestured to Nagasena and asked, "If there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes? Who eats, sleeps, and thinks?" He then pointed to his own magnificent chariot and asked, "Is this chariot the pole? Is it the axle? Is it the wheels, the frame, or the reins?" Nagasena replied no to each question. Then, the king concluded triumphantly, "There is no chariot." Nagasena remained calm. "Your Majesty," he said, "just as the word chariot is a conventional name for a collection of parts, correctly assembled, so Nagasena is a conventional name for this collection of physical and mental components. In the ultimate sense, there is no chariot and no Nagasena." At that moment, the king understood. The self, like the chariot, is a functional whole, but it is empty of any independent, singular essence. We have now journeyed from seeing that the river of life is constantly flowing, the truth of anicca, to realizing that we are not a rock standing apart from it, but are, in fact, the flow itself. This is the truth of anatta. This can feel disorienting. If there is no fixed ground beneath our feet, and no fixed I to stand on it, then how are we to live? If we are just a collection of processes, tossed about by causes and conditions, are we not just helpless puppets? This is where the true genius of the Buddhist path reveals itself. It does not leave us in this deconstructed state. It offers a practical, ethical, and beautiful framework for how to skillfully navigate this fluid, selfless reality. It provides a way to live, not from the rigid and fearful standpoint of a separate ego, but from a place of wisdom, compassion, and true freedom. This is the purpose of the path that comes next. Having ventured into the profound and perhaps unsettling truths of reality, witnessing the relentless flow of impermanence and the elusive nature of a solid self, we might feel as though the ground has been swept from beneath our feet. If everything is in flux and there is no permanent I to stand firm, how then are we supposed to live? Are we simply adrift in a meaningless chaos? It is precisely at this point of radical questioning that the Buddha reveals the constructive, hopeful, and deeply practical heart of his teaching. He offers us a way to navigate this fluid reality not with fear, but with skill, grace, and confidence. Having diagnosed the illness of dukkha and identified its cause in tanha, he now presents the cure. This is the third noble truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, known as Nirodha. It is the profound proclamation that an end to the frantic cycle of thirst and dissatisfaction is possible. And immediately following this promise, he lays out the clear, detailed prescription for achieving it. This is the fourth noble truth, the path leading to the end of suffering, the Magga. This path is the Noble Eightfold Path, a comprehensive guide for living that is arguably one of the most remarkable psychological and ethical systems ever conceived. It is not a set of divine commandments to be followed out of blind faith, but a pragmatic and holistic design for human flourishing, a raft to carry us from the shore of confusion and anxiety to the far shore of liberation and peace. To make this path more understandable, it is traditionally grouped into three essential trainings, each one supporting and deepening the others. Think of it like building a sturdy and beautiful structure. First, you need a clear blueprint and an understanding of architectural principles. This is the training in wisdom, prajna. Second, you need a solid, level foundation and well-constructed walls. This is the training in ethical conduct, shila. Finally, you need the skill, focus, and tools to actually assemble the structure and refine its interior. This is the training in mental discipline, samadhi. These three trainings are not meant to be practiced in a rigid sequence. They are interwoven, each aspect enriching the others simultaneously. Good ethical conduct provides the stability for deep mental training. A disciplined mind is able to see with greater wisdom, and profound wisdom naturally inspires ethical conduct. It is a complete, integrated system for transforming our experience of life from the inside out. Let us first look at the blueprint, the training in wisdom. This division consists of the first two factors of the path, and they form the intellectual and motivational foundation for everything that follows. The very first factor is right view, samadhite. This is the map itself. It is the crucial reorientation of our perspective, the decision to see the world, not through the distorting lens of our cravings and fears, but as it truly is. At its simplest level, right view is the understanding of the very truths we have been exploring, acknowledging the reality of dukkha, understanding that its cause is tanha, recognizing that its cessation is possible, and accepting that the Eightfold Path is the way to achieve that cessation. It is the conscious abandonment of delusion. It's letting go of the belief that material possessions will bring lasting happiness, or the idea that we are a permanent self that needs constant defending. It is the cognitive shift that moves us from being a passive victim of our circumstances to an active participant in our own liberation. The second factor of wisdom is right intention, or right thought, samma sankappa. If right view is the map, right intention is the compass that sets our direction. It is the conscious cultivation of the motivations that will guide our journey. It entails nurturing three key intentions. First, the intention of renunciation, which means the willingness to let go of our obsessive clinging and addiction to sensual pleasures. Second, the intention of goodwill, which is the active cultivation of friendliness and kindness towards all beings, serving as a direct antidote to our tendencies toward anger and hatred. And third, the intention of harmlessness or compassion, which is the deep resolve not to cause harm to any living creature, directly opposing cruelty and violence. Right intention purifies our heart, ensuring that our journey on the path is motivated not by selfish ambition, but by a genuine desire for peace, for ourselves and for others. Next, we lay the foundation with the training in ethical conduct. This group of three factors governs our interactions with the world our speech, and our actions. This is not about morality imposed from the outside to earn a reward in the afterlife. It is a deeply practical training based on the understanding that our external actions have a direct and powerful impact on our internal state. To create a calm and clear mind, we must first create a life of harmony and integrity. The third factor of the path is right speech, samavacha. This invites us to become mindful of the immense power of our words. It means abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh or abusive language, and from idle chatter that clutters the mind. Instead, we train ourselves to speak truthfully, kindly, and at the appropriate time, using words that are helpful and promote harmony. The fourth factor is right action, samakamanta. This involves aligning our physical actions with our intention of harmlessness. Traditionally, this means refraining from taking life, from taking what is not given, and from sexual misconduct. It is a fundamental respect for the life, property, and relationships of others. By living in this way, we create a sphere of safety and trust around us, and we free our own minds from the poisons of guilt, remorse, and fear. The fifth factor is right livelihood, sama ajiva. This extends these ethical principles into our professional lives. It encourages us to find a way to make a living that does not cause harm to others or compromise our values. This means avoiding occupations that involve deceit, exploitation, or trade in weapons, intoxicants, or living beings. It is about bringing our full integrity into the marketplace, ensuring that the way we sustain our life does not contribute to the suffering of the world. Finally, with the blueprint of wisdom and the foundation of ethics in place, we come to the actual hands-on work of shaping the mind, the training in mental discipline. This is where we develop the inner tools of focus and awareness. The sixth factor is right effort, sama vayama. This is the balanced and intelligent application of our energy. It's not a grim, white-knuckled struggle, but a joyful diligence. It has four aspects: the effort to prevent unskillful, negative states of mind from arising, the effort to abandon them if they have already arisen, the effort to cultivate skillful, positive states of mind, like kindness and generosity, and the effort to maintain those positive states once they have arisen. It is the work of being a wise gardener of our own mind. The seventh, and perhaps most famous, factor is right mindfulness, samasati. This is the quality of clear, non-judgmental awareness in the present moment. It is the practice of paying attention to our body, our feelings, our mind states, and the content of our thoughts, without getting lost in them. Mindfulness is the master tool, the steady light that illuminates the rest of the path, allowing us to see what is happening both inside and outside of us, so we can apply right effort effectively. The eighth and final factor is right concentration, sama samadhi. This is the fruit of the preceding 7 factors. As our mind is purified by ethical conduct and stabilized by mindfulness and effort, it develops the ability to unify itself and rest upon a single object without distraction. This leads to deep states of meditative absorption, known as jhana, which bring profound tranquility and clarity, creating the ideal conditions for insight wisdom to arise and cut through the final layers of ignorance. The Buddha once told a parable of a man who came to a great river, wide and dangerous, with the shore of suffering on this side and the shore of peace on the other. There was no bridge or ferry. The man, being resourceful, gathered branches, reeds, and vines, and bound them together to build a simple raft. By means of the raft, he safely paddled across to the far shore. The Noble Eightfold Path is this raft. It is not a set of doctrines to be worshipped or clung to. It is a practical tool, skillfully designed to perform a specific task, to carry us across the river of suffering. Once we have reached the other side, we do not need to carry the raft on our back. We can express our gratitude and walk on, unburdened. This remarkable path, with its interwoven strands of wisdom, ethics, and mental discipline, is our guide. It may seem complex, but it is a journey that begins with a single, crucial step, ensuring we are reading the map correctly and pointing ourselves in the right direction. And so, we will now begin to walk this path together, starting with the very foundation of wisdom that illuminates all the steps that follow. We have now arrived at the very heart of the path, the central pillar upon which all other aspects of the training are supported. It is a word you have likely heard many times, a concept that has permeated modern culture, appearing in boardrooms, classrooms, and on the screens of our smartphones. That word is mindfulness. But in our journey together, we must gently set aside the commercialized, watered-down versions of this practice and seek to understand it in its original, profound context. Within the framework of the Eightfold Path, mindfulness, or sati, is not a life hack for productivity or a simple relaxation technique. It is a radical capacity of the human mind, a precise and powerful tool for self-discovery and liberation. It is the lantern we spoke of at the beginning of our journey, the steady, illuminating flame that we can learn to carry into the storm of our own mind. Before we explore how to cultivate it, let us first clear the ground by understanding what mindfulness is not. Mindfulness is not an attempt to stop your thoughts. This is perhaps the most common and discouraging misconception for beginners. Many people sit down to practice, and upon discovering the chaotic, non-stop nature of their own mind, they conclude they are failing. They believe the goal is to achieve a state of perfect mental blankness, a pristine, inner silence. But this is not the goal, nor is it possible for most human beings. The mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. The practice of mindfulness is not about waging a war against your thoughts. It is about fundamentally changing your relationship to them. It is about learning to witness the flow of thought without being swept away by it, to observe the inner monologue without having to believe every word it says. Secondly, mindfulness is not about zoning out or becoming blissfully unaware of the world. In fact, it is the exact opposite. It is a state of high-resolution awareness, a practice of zoning in. It is about waking up to the vivid, sensory reality of the present moment, a reality we so often miss because we are lost in the fog of past regrets and future anxieties. Finally, and most importantly, mindfulness is not another task to be good at, another arena for self-judgment. The practice is not about achieving a perfect, unbroken state of focus. The true practice lies in the compassionate, non-judgmental return of your attention, over and over again. So what is it then? The most classic definition describes mindfulness as paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. Let's break that down. Paying attention on purpose means it is an intentional act. We are choosing where to place the spotlight of our awareness, rather than letting it be hijacked by every random thought or external distraction. In the present moment means we are anchoring our awareness in the here and now, the only place where life is actually happening. We are stepping out of the virtual reality of our thoughts and into the tangible reality of our immediate experience. And non-judgmentally is the secret ingredient, the quality of heart, that transforms this from a mere concentration exercise into a practice of profound self-compassion. It means we meet whatever arises in our awareness, be it a pleasant sensation, a difficult emotion, or a critical thought, with a quality of gentle acceptance. We allow it to be there without needing to fix it, change it, or condemn it. This non-judgmental stance is what allows us to see clearly, because we are no longer distorting our experience through the lens of our preferences. The most universal and accessible way to begin this training is by using the breath as our anchor. The breath is a remarkable tool. It is always with us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It is neutral, and it happens in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past, nor can you breathe in the future. To be aware of your breath is to be aware of the now. The instruction is beautifully simple. Find a posture that embodies a sense of dignity and alertness. This can be sitting on a cushion on the floor, or sitting upright in a chair with your feet flat on the ground. You don't need to be rigid, but you also don't want to be slouching. Allow your eyes to gently close, or cast your gaze softly downwards, and then simply bring your attention to the physical sensations of breathing. You don't need to change your breath, control it, or even think about it. Your only task is to feel it. You might choose to rest your attention at the tip of your nostrils, feeling the subtle coolness of the air as it enters and the gentle warmth as it leaves. Or you might place your awareness on your abdomen, feeling the gentle rise on the in-breath and the soft fall on the out-breath. Settle in with one of these anchor points, and for a few moments, just rest there, feeling the simple, rhythmic dance of your own breath. Now, inevitably, and this is guaranteed, your mind will wander. After a few breaths, or maybe just one, you will find yourself lost. You will be planning your dinner, replaying a conversation, worrying about a work project, or drifting in a fantasy. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This moment is, in fact, the most important part of the entire practice. The moment you realize, my mind has wandered, is a moment of mindfulness itself. You have woken up from the dream of thought. And what do you do in that moment? You do not scold yourself. You do not sigh in frustration. You simply, and very gently, acknowledge where the mind has gone planning, worrying, remembering, and then you softly, kindly, escort your attention back to the anchor of the breath. That is the entire practice. Breathing in, breathing out, realizing the mind has wandered, gently returning, over and over and over again. Each time you do this, you are strengthening a mental muscle. You are performing one repetition, one bicep curl for the brain. You are rewiring your own neural pathways, weakening the habit of being lost in thought, and strengthening the habit of being present. The point is not how long you can stay with the breath. The point is how kindly and consistently you can return when you notice you have left. While this practice is ancient, modern science is now able to map out exactly what is happening in our nervous system when we engage in it. Our bodies have an autonomic nervous system that operates largely outside our conscious control. It has two main branches. The first is the sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight response. This is our accelerator. When we perceive a threat, whether it's a real physical danger or a stressful email, this system floods our body with adrenaline and cortisol, increasing our heart rate, tensing our muscles, and preparing us to battle or flee. Modern life, with its constant demands and overstimulation, has this system stuck in overdrive for many of us, leading to chronic stress and anxiety. The second branch is the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest response. This is our brake pedal. It calms the body down, lowers the heart rate, and promotes repair and relaxation. The practice of mindfulness, especially with its focus on slow, conscious breathing, acts as a manual override switch. It sends a direct signal to the brain that we are safe, activating the parasympathetic nervous system and deactivating the stress response. Furthermore, studies in neuroscience have shown that a consistent mindfulness practice can lead to measurable changes in the brain itself, a phenomenon known as neuroplasticity. It can increase the density of gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for emotional regulation, planning, and executive function. At the same time, it can actually shrink the amygdala, the brain's fear and anxiety center, making us less reactive to perceived threats. We are, quite literally, changing our minds for the better. While the breath is the foundational anchor, the practice of sati extends far beyond it, encompassing the entirety of our human experience. This is traditionally described as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first, which we have explored, is mindfulness of the body. This can be expanded through practices like the body scan, where we move our attention systematically through the entire body, noticing sensations of warmth, tingling, pressure, or numbness without judgment. It also means bringing awareness to the body as it moves through the world, feeling the soles of your feet on the ground as you walk, noticing the warmth of the water as you wash your hands, truly tasting the food you eat. This brings the practice out of the formal sitting period and into the fabric of your daily life. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or Vedana. This is a crucial skill for emotional intelligence. It involves learning to observe our feelings as they arise, simply labeling them as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Instead of getting caught in the story about the feeling, "I'm so angry because he said that," we bring our attention to the raw, physical sensations of the emotion in the body. Where do you feel anger? Is it a tightness in the chest, a heat in the face, a clenching in the jaw? By staying with the physical sensations, we observe the feeling as a temporary, energetic event, rather than a solid fact about who we are. This creates a vital space of wisdom between an emotional trigger and our reaction to it. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, or chitta. This involves observing the overall quality or tone of your mind in any given moment. Is the mind scattered or focused? Is it agitated or calm? Is it dull or bright? Is it full of judgment or acceptance? We are not trying to force the mind to be a certain way, but simply acknowledging its current state with clarity, like a meteorologist noting the weather conditions without trying to change them. This recognition is the first step toward cultivating more skillful states of mind. The fourth and final foundation is mindfulness of mental objects, or dhammas. This is the practice of observing the very content of our mind-sour thoughts, memories, desires, and aversions as they arise and pass away. We learn to see them for what they are, transient mental events, not absolute truths. We can watch a thought about failure arise, and instead of believing it and spiraling into despair, we can simply note it, thinking, and watch it dissolve, just like a cloud passing through the sky. This is where we directly experience the truths of anicca and anatta. We see, in real time, that our thoughts and our sense of self are not solid, but are flickering, impermanent processes. There is an old story of a great acrobat and his young apprentice. They performed a dangerous act where the apprentice had to stand on the acrobat's shoulders as he walked a tightrope high above the ground. To ensure their safety, the master told the apprentice, "Now listen, I will watch out for you. and you will watch out for me, and together we will be safe." But the young apprentice, who was wise, replied, "No, master, that will not work. I will watch out for myself, and you will watch out for yourself. In this way, we will be safe." The wisdom here is profound. The only way for the acrobat to be stable enough to support his apprentice is to give his own balance and his own next step, his absolute, undivided attention. The only way for the apprentice to remain balanced is to focus completely on his own center of gravity. Their safety and success depend on each of them being fully responsible for their own present moment awareness. Our lives are this tightrope walk. We are constantly balancing over the abyss of distraction and confusion. Our peace, our stability, and our ability to be there for others depends entirely on our capacity to watch out for ourselves, be fully present for our own experience, right here, right now. Mindfulness is the training that teaches us how to do this. It is the skill of placing our foot, our attention, firmly and deliberately on the solid ground of the present moment. And it is in this present moment, revealed and illuminated by the light of mindfulness, that we find the only true refuge from the storms of the mind. Through the practice of mindfulness, we have discovered the anchor of the breath and the vast open sky of awareness. We have learned, even for a few moments at a time, to bring our wandering mind back to the immediacy of our own experience. This practice does not create a new reality. It simply reveals the one that has been here all along, obscured by the dense fog of our own thinking. The reality it reveals is the present moment, and within this present moment lies the only true refuge we will ever find. To understand why this is so, we must first examine the places where we habitually choose to live, the ghost realm of the past and the phantom realm of the future. These are the twin thieves that rob us of our lives, minute by minute, day by day. First, consider the past. For many of us, the mind is like a haunted house, and we are its willing ghosts, endlessly roaming the corridors of yesterday. We are trapped in loops of rumination, replaying events over and over again. We relitigate old arguments in our head, thinking of all the clever things we should have said. We meticulously re-examine our mistakes, bathing in the toxic waters of regret and self-blame. We cling to the memory of past hurts, allowing old wounds to define our present identity. Or we pine for the good old days, comparing our current reality unfavorably with a romanticized, edited memory of what once was. In all these cases, we are giving our precious life energy to something that no longer exists. The past is a memory trace in the brain, a neurological echo. It has no substance. To live there is to be in a constant conversation with ghosts. This obsessive return to the past is a primary driver of depression, a state of being weighed down by the accumulated, undigested burdens of what has been. You cannot change a single moment of what has already occurred. To invest your present awareness in this powerless realm is to drain yourself of the vitality needed to live the life that is actually in front of you. Then there is the other thief, the future. If the past is a ghost realm, the future is a phantom realm, a land of pure speculation and mental projection. For the anxious mind, this is the preferred territory. We spend countless hours rehearsing for disasters that will most likely never happen. We play out catastrophic scenarios, trying to anticipate and control every possible negative outcome. What if I lose my job? What if I get sick? What if they don't like me? What if I fail? This constant state of pre-living potential calamities is the very definition of anxiety. We are triggering our body's fight or flight response to threats that are not real. They are purely imaginary. We are suffering now from things that may never occur. We create endless to-do lists and 5-year plans, believing that if we can just manage the future perfectly, we will finally be able to relax. But the future never arrives. When it gets here, it is simply another present moment. To live in the future is to be perpetually one step removed from your own life, always preparing, never arriving. It is to sacrifice the reality of today for a fantasy of tomorrow. Between these two illusory realms of past and future lies the only place that is real, the only place where life actually unfolds, the now. Your life is not the story of your past, nor is it your anxieties about the future. Your life is the feeling of the breath entering your body right now. It is the sound of traffic outside your window right now. It is the warmth of the cup in your hands right now. It is the thought that is crossing your mind right now. This is it. The present moment is your one and only point of contact with reality. And because of this, it is the only place where you have any real power. You cannot act in the past. You cannot act in the future. You can only act, choose, and experience in this moment. To fully arrive in the present is to reclaim your agency. It is to move from being a helpless spectator of your own mind-created dramas to being an active participant in your own life. This does not mean the present moment will always be pleasant. Sometimes, the now contains physical pain, difficult emotions, or challenging situations. The invitation of mindfulness is not to pretend this isn't so. The invitation is to meet the reality of this moment, whatever it holds, with courage and awareness. There is a profound wisdom in this. The actual, raw sensation of a difficult experience is often far less painful than the suffering we create through our resistance to it. The raw feeling of sadness is one thing. The story we tell ourselves about how we shouldn't be sad and how it will last forever is a second and far heavier burden. This is the teaching of the second arrow we encountered earlier. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life. The second arrow is the suffering we inflict upon ourselves by fighting with reality, by staying in the present, by being willing to feel what we are feeling without adding the stories of past blame or future dread. We learn to suffer only from the first arrow. We stop stabbing ourselves again and again. How then do we return to this refuge when we are caught in the storms of thought? We can use simple, tangible anchors as portals to the present. When you feel your mind spinning with worry, intentionally shift your attention to the physical sensation of your feet on the floor. Feel the solidity, the pressure, the connection to the earth. In an instant, you have moved from the abstract world of thought to the concrete world of physical sensation. You are here. You can also use your senses. Pause and deliberately name 5 things you can see around you. Then, 4 things you can feel against your skin. 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell. 1 thing you can taste. This simple exercise acts like a circuit breaker, interrupting the feedback loop of anxiety and grounding you firmly in your immediate sensory world. Or you can transform any routine activity into a practice. When you drink a cup of coffee, instead of being lost in thought, truly experience it. Feel the weight and warmth of the mug. See the rich color of the liquid. Inhale its aroma. Take a sip and notice the taste, the temperature, the sensation of swallowing. In these moments, you are not just drinking coffee, you are fully inhabiting your life. There is a classic Zen story that illustrates the tragedy of living outside the present. 2 monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river where a young woman was standing, afraid to cross. Without a word, the senior monk picked her up, carried her across the churning water, and set her down on the other side. The woman thanked him, and the monks continued their journey. Hours passed. The junior monk grew more and more agitated. Finally, he could not contain himself any longer and burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? We are monks. We are forbidden from touching a woman, let alone carrying one in our arms." The senior monk looked at him calmly and replied, "Brother, I left that woman by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her? We are all, in some way, the junior monk. We carry the ghosts of yesterday's events, the burdens of past injustices, the weight of old mistakes. Long after they are over, we allow them to poison the fresh, new moments of our lives." The senior monk demonstrates the wisdom of living in the present. He performed the action that was needed in that moment with full attention and compassion, and when the moment was over, he was completely free of it, ready to meet the next moment with an open and uncluttered mind. Ultimately, this practice redefines our search for peace. We often believe that peace is a destination, a future time when all our problems will be solved, all our ducks will be in a row, and all our anxieties will have vanished. This is a fantasy. That perfect problem-free future will never arrive. True peace is not the absence of problems. It is the ability to meet the problems, the joys, and the sheer ordinariness of this present moment with a calm, centered, and open heart. It is a capacity we cultivate within, not a condition we find without. And if this moment is the only place we can truly live, the only place we have power, then the actions we choose to take in this moment are of supreme importance. What we do, say, and think right now is not just a reaction to the past. It is the very seed of our future. This understanding of present action and future consequence leads us directly to our next area of inquiry, the profound and often misunderstood law of karma. As we learn to anchor ourselves in the potent reality of the present moment, we realize that this is the only place from which we can act. Our life is not a pre-written script we are forced to perform. It is a story we are actively writing, sentence by sentence, with every choice we make. This brings us to one of the most widely known, yet deeply misunderstood, concepts from Eastern philosophy, the law of karma. In the West, karma is often portrayed as a kind of cosmic bookkeeping, a system of supernatural justice, where a divine scorekeeper doles out rewards and punishments. We talk about instant karma when someone who cuts us off in traffic gets pulled over, or we attribute a stroke of bad luck to misdeeds in a past life. This interpretation, while common, misses the profound psychological and practical wisdom of the original teaching. Understood correctly, karma is not about fate, destiny, or divine retribution. It is a natural law, as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. It is the simple, yet powerful, law of cause and effect, as it applies to our intentional actions. The Buddha's own definition cuts through all misconception. He said, "It is intention, O monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This is the absolute core of the teaching. Karma is not the event that happens to you. Karma is the volitional impulse that arises within you. It is the quality of the intention behind your actions that truly matters. The universe is not a courtroom, and karma is not its judge. It is more like a garden. The intention behind each action is a seed. An action born of greed, hatred, or confusion is like planting a thorny, poisonous weed. An action born of generosity, kindness, or wisdom is like planting a seed that will bear sweet fruit. The results of these actions, the harvest, are not a reward or punishment, but simply the natural maturation of the seeds that were planted. Let us make this more concrete. Imagine you are walking down the street and you accidentally trip and knock someone over. They are hurt, and you feel remorse. Now, imagine walking down the same street and deliberately shoving that same person to the ground. The external result might be identical. The person is hurt. But the internal cause, the intention, is worlds apart. The first action, being unintentional, carries very little karmic weight. The second action, born of a malicious will, plants a powerful and toxic seed in your own mind. It creates a memory, a character trait, a habit of aggression. You have conditioned your mind to be a place where causing harm is possible. This is the immediate effect of karma. It is not about waiting for a thunderbolt from heaven. It is about the immediate, subtle, and cumulative ways in which our intentions shape who we are becoming, moment by moment. A single act of anger makes the next act of anger easier. A single act of patience makes the next act of patience more likely. We are, quite literally, sculpting our own character with every intentional choice. This sculpting happens through 3 doors of action: body, speech, and mind. The karma of the body is the most obvious. These are our physical actions. When we act with our body out of compassion, helping someone in need, offering a comforting embrace, protecting a vulnerable creature, we plant seeds of kindness. When we act out of hatred, striking another, causing physical harm, we plant seeds of violence. The karma of speech is just as potent. We saw in our exploration of the path that right speech is a cornerstone of ethical conduct. Here, we see why. When we use words to lie, to slander, to create division, or to abuse, we are not only harming others, we are weaving a web of negativity that inevitably entangles us. We are conditioning our minds to be deceitful and harsh. Conversely, when we use our speech to express truth, to offer encouragement, to heal divisions, and to speak with kindness, we are cultivating a mental environment of clarity and peace. We are creating a world around us and a world within us that is more harmonious. The most subtle and arguably the most powerful door of karma is the mind itself. Every thought we choose to entertain is a karmic action. You can be sitting perfectly still, in complete silence, and be creating powerful karma. When you sit and silently indulge in fantasies of revenge, replaying old hurts and nursing your grievances, you are watering the seeds of hatred in your own heart. You are conditioning yourself toward bitterness and suffering, even if no one else ever knows. On the other hand, when you deliberately cultivate thoughts of goodwill, when you wish for the well-being of a friend, a stranger, or even someone you find difficult, you are performing a powerful karmic action. You are watering the seeds of compassion and loving kindness. You are transforming your own mind into a source of peace. This is incredibly empowering. Even when external circumstances are beyond our control, when we are stuck, sick, or imprisoned, we still have sovereignty over our own minds. We can still choose which thoughts to cultivate and which to let go of. We are never truly powerless. In every moment, we are at a choice point, able to plant seeds for a future of greater peace or greater suffering. This is best understood through the metaphor of the farmer and the field. Your mind is the field. The world provides the conditions: the sun, the rain, the quality of the soil. You, through your intentional actions, are the farmer. If you spend your days scattering the seeds of angry thoughts, selfish actions, and harsh words, you cannot then stand back in bewilderment and blame the field when your life is overgrown with the thorns of conflict, loneliness, and misery. You have simply reaped what you have sown. If, however, you mindfully and diligently plant the seeds of generous intentions, compassionate actions, and kind words, your life will naturally begin to yield a harvest of joy, connection, and inner peace. This is not magic, it is spiritual agriculture. The law of karma does not mean you are to blame for everything that happens to you. A good farmer can do everything right and still have a hailstorm or random, external event damage his crops. Life is full of such hailstorms. But a good farmer also knows that over the long term, the quality of his harvest is overwhelmingly determined by the quality of his sowing. Seen in this light, karma is the ultimate teaching of empowerment. It liberates us from the paralyzing belief that our happiness is in the hands of others, or subject to the whims of a capricious fate. It places the keys to our own happiness and freedom squarely in our own hands. We are not prisoners of our past. The past has certainly created the conditions of our present moment, but it does not determine our response to it. Our response, our intention, in this moment, is the new seed we are planting. We are the inheritors of our past karma and the creators of our future karma. Every day, every hour, every breath is a new opportunity to plant a different kind of seed, to steer our lives in a new direction. We are the artists of our own lives, and our thoughts, words, and deeds are the brushstrokes. This perspective as the active cultivator of our own mental field gives us a profound sense of responsibility and hope. It also invites a very practical question. Any experienced farmer knows that cultivating a field is not just about planting good seeds. It is also, crucially, about dealing with the weeds that inevitably arise and threaten to choke out the new growth. In our own minds, these weeds have specific names and characteristics. They are the common, recurring patterns of negative energy that obscure our clarity and hinder our progress on the path. To be effective farmers of our own consciousness, we must first learn to identify these primary weeds. This brings us to the next stage of our investigation, an exploration of the 5 hindrances. As we take up the profound and empowering role of the farmer of our own consciousness, we understand that our happiness is not a matter of chance, but a result of careful cultivation. With the law of karma as our guide, we begin to diligently plant the seeds of wholesome intentions, seeds of kindness, generosity, and clarity in the field of our mind. Yet, any gardener knows that planting good seeds is only half the work. We must also learn to recognize and skillfully manage the weeds that inevitably sprout, threatening to choke out the new growth and overrun the entire field. In the landscape of the mind, these primary weeds are known as the 5 hindrances, or Panyaka Nivaranani. These are not signs of personal failure or moral corruption. They are universal, recurring patterns of mental energy, common to every untrained human mind. They are the mind's natural tendencies toward confusion and entanglement. The path does not ask us to eradicate them through sheer force, an act that would be both exhausting and futile. Instead, it invites us to become wise gardeners, learning to identify each weed by its unique characteristics, to understand its nature without judgment, and to apply the appropriate antidote that allows it to wither, making space for the wholesome plants to thrive. Think of your own innate awareness, your natural clarity as a full moon in a clear night sky. The hindrances are like passing clouds, temporarily obscuring its light, but never truly diminishing it. Our task is to learn to sit with the clouds, understanding their transient nature until they pass and the radiant moon is revealed once more. The first of these hindrances, and the one most directly related to the thirst of tanha, is sensory desire, kamachanda. This is the wanting mind, the restless, forward-leaning energy that constantly seeks pleasure and gratification through the five physical senses and the mind itself. It is the voice that whispers, "If only I had that new phone. If only I could taste that dessert. If only I could experience that perfect vacation, then I would be happy." In a state of sensory desire, the mind is captivated by the perceived promise of an object. It becomes narrowed, focused, and agitated, like a hungry animal hunting for its next meal. In our modern world, entire industries are built to trigger and exploit this hindrance. The endless, algorithm-driven scroll on social media, the targeted ads that follow us across the internet, the constant stream of entertainment designed to be consumed compulsively. All of these are fuel for kamachanda. When this hindrance is active, we cannot be at peace because our contentment is always projected onto a future moment of acquisition. The skillful way to work with sensory desire is not to suppress it with guilt or shame. Instead, we turn the light of mindfulness directly upon it. We observe the desire as a raw energy in the body, a feeling of pulling or craving, without getting lost in the story about the object. We watch it arise, intensify, and eventually, if we do not feed it, pass away, revealing its impermanent nature. We can also apply an antidote of contemplation, reflecting on the downsides of the desired object, the eventual boredom with the new gadget, the feeling of sluggishness after overeating, which helps to cool the fires of wanting. The second hindrance is the polar opposite of the first. It is ill will or aversion, vyapada. This is the don't, wanting mind, the energy of pushing away, rejecting, and destroying. It manifests as a wide spectrum of emotions, from subtle irritation and frustration to outright anger, resentment, and hatred. While desire pulls us toward what we find pleasant, ill will violently shoves away what we find unpleasant. When this hindrance is active, the mind becomes contracted, tight, and hot. It is a state of inner warfare. We see this manifest all around us, in road rage, in the vitriol of online comment sections, in political polarization, and in the grudges we nurse for years against those who have wronged us. It can also be turned inward as harsh self-criticism and self-loathing. The primary antidote to ill will is the deliberate cultivation of its opposite, metta, or loving kindness. This is a practice of generating feelings of warmth, friendliness, and goodwill. We can start by offering these kind wishes to ourselves, a powerful remedy for the inner critic. Then we can extend them to loved ones, to neutral people, and eventually, even to those we find difficult. By consciously watering the seeds of kindness, we leave less fertile ground for the weeds of anger to grow. Mindfulness also helps us to see that the primary victim of our own anger is ourselves. It is like holding a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. We are the one who gets burned first. The third hindrance is a heavy, murky state known as sloth and torpor, thinamida. This is not the simple physical tiredness that requires rest. It is a mental and spiritual heaviness, a dullness, fogginess, and profound lack of energy. Sloth is the laziness of the mind, and torpor is the drowsiness of the body. When in the grip of this hindrance, the mind feels like it is wading through molasses. There is no sharpness, no clarity, motivation vanishes, and even simple tasks feel overwhelming. It can manifest as chronic procrastination, a desire to escape into mindless entertainment, like binge-watching television for hours, or a feeling of being half asleep even when we are awake. It is a state of withdrawal and shutdown. To work with this hindrance, we must find ways to gently arouse energy. Physically, this can mean getting up and walking around, changing our posture to be more upright and alert, or splashing cool water on our face. Mentally, we can arouse energy by cultivating interest and curiosity in our immediate experience. We can also reflect on stimulating themes, such as the preciousness and rarity of this human life, or the inevitability of death, which can instill a sense of urgency and purpose in our practice. The goal is to pierce through the fog with a bright, focused energy. The fourth hindrance is perhaps the most familiar to those of us living in the 21st century. It is restlessness and worry, uddaka kukucha. This is the agitated, scattered, monkey mind that jumps uncontrollably from one branch of thought to another. Restlessness, uddaka, is the inability of the mind to settle, the constant buzzing energy that prevents us from focusing. Worry, kukucha, is a specific form of this, the mind getting caught in loops about the past or the future. It is the obsessive replaying of past mistakes, accompanied by regret, or the frantic planning for future scenarios, accompanied by anxiety. This is the signature affliction of our overstimulated, multitasking, digitally saturated age. We feel it when we try to read a book, but compulsively check our phone every 2 minutes, or when we lie awake at night, our mind racing through an endless list of fears and obligations. The primary antidote to this scattered state is to return again and again to a point of calm stability, grounding our awareness firmly in the physical sensations of the breath or the body is a powerful way to soothe this agitation. Deliberately slowing down our physical movements can also help to slow the mind. Furthermore, cultivating states of joy and contentment can act as a gentle balm for the restless heart, allowing it to finally settle. The fifth and final hindrance is skeptical doubt, vicikiccha. It is important to distinguish this from healthy, intelligent inquiry, which is encouraged on the path. Skeptical doubt is a cynical, indecisive, and paralyzing state of mind. It is a restless inner voice that perpetually undermines our efforts. It manifests as doubt in the teachings. How can this possibly work? The doubt in the teacher or guide, and most critically, doubt in ourselves. I'm too broken for this. I'm just not cut out for meditation. I'll never get it. When in the grip of this hindrance, the mind spins in circles, unable to commit to any course of action. It constantly looks for reasons why the practice will fail, effectively sabotaging itself before it even begins. To work with this hindrance, one can seek clarity by returning to the core teachings and reflecting on their logic. We can find inspiration in the stories of others who have walked this path. Most importantly, we must address the doubt we have in ourselves by cultivating a quality of faith, not blind faith, but the practical trust of a patient who decides to take the prescribed medicine consistently to see for themselves if it works. We can also keep a record of our own small moments of progress, the brief instances of peace or clarity we have experienced, as evidence to counter the cynical inner voice. The ancient texts compare the mind under the influence of these 5 hindrances to 5 bowls of water. When the mind is overcome with sensory desire, it is like a bowl of water mixed with bright dyes. We cannot see our reflection because we are captivated by the colors. When overcome with ill will, it is like a bowl of boiling water. Our reflection is distorted by the violent agitation. When overcome with sloth and torpor, it is like a bowl of water covered with thick algae. The light cannot penetrate it. When overcome with restlessness and worry, it is like a bowl of water whipped by the wind. The surface is too choppy to reflect anything clearly. And when overcome with skeptical doubt, it is like a bowl of muddy water, stirred up from the bottom. Our reflection is completely obscured. The entire practice is aimed at allowing these conditions to settle. We don't need to create a reflection. We simply need to allow the water of the mind to become still, clear, and clean. Our true nature, luminous and clear, is already there, waiting to be seen. Recognizing these 5 universal patterns of energy is a transformative step. Instead of being a victim of our moods, we become a wise observer of our own mind. We learn to greet these visitors with mindfulness rather than being overthrown by them. And as we practice working with them, we may notice that all of these hindrances, in one way or another, involve a kind of holding on, a clinging. We cling to a desire. We cling to a resentment. We cling to our sleepiness. We cling to our worries. We cling to our doubts. This points to a universal skill, an overarching art form that is the key to working with them all. This is the gentle, courageous, and liberating art of letting go. Having learned to identify the 5 primary weeds, the hindrances that choke the field of our mind, we arrive at a crucial insight. Whether we are entangled in desire, aversion, dullness, agitation, or doubt, the underlying mechanism is one of grasping, of holding on too tightly. We cling to our desires. We cling to our resentments. We cling to our worries. The mind, in its untrained state, is a clenched fist. The path, therefore, calls for the cultivation of a universal skill, an art form that is the master antidote to all of these hindrances. This is the gentle, courageous, and profoundly liberating practice of letting go. In our culture, the phrase letting go can sometimes sound passive, like an act of resignation, weakness, or simply giving up. But in the context of Buddhist wisdom, this could not be further from the truth. The Pali term often used, nekkhamma, implies a going forth, a conscious act of renunciation. It is not apathy. It is an active and intelligent choice, born of seeing clearly that our clinging is the source of our suffering. It is an act of strength, not weakness. Imagine holding a heavy rock in your outstretched hand. To keep holding it requires constant effort, tension, and strain. To let it go, to simply open your hand and allow it to drop, is an act of release, an unburdening. Letting go is the opening of the fist, the release of the tension that we have been applying, often for our entire lives. This practice can be approached at several levels, starting with the most tangible. We can begin with the practice of letting go of our attachment to material things. We live in a society that tells us our security, identity, and happiness are intrinsically linked to what we own. We accumulate possessions, believing they will fill an inner void, only to find that they demand our time, our energy, and our worry. Our houses become museums of our past intentions, cluttered with objects we no longer use or need. The practice of letting go here is not necessarily about taking a vow of poverty, but about loosening the mental grip we have on our things. It can start with the simple, concrete act of decluttering. As you go through your possessions, you can mindfully ask of each object, is this truly serving me now? Or am I holding on to it out of fear, habit, or a misplaced sense of identity? When you let go of an old piece of clothing or a book you will never read again, you are doing more than just clearing a shelf. You are training the mind. You are demonstrating to yourself that your sense of self is not diminished by having less. You are experiencing the lightness and freedom that comes from non-attachment. You begin to realize the profound truth that our possessions often end up possessing us, and that true wealth lies not in having more, but in wanting less. This creates a space, both physically and mentally, for new energy to flow into your life. From the material realm, we move to a deeper and often more challenging level, letting go of grievances, resentments, and old hurts. So many of us carry a heavy bag filled with the memories of past wrongs. We hold on to anger towards those who have betrayed us, misunderstood us, or harmed us. We replay these events in our minds, keeping the wounds fresh, believing that our anger is somehow protecting us or punishing the other person. But as the saying goes, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The only person we are truly harming is ourselves. The anger and bitterness generate toxic stress hormones in our bodies, cloud our judgment, and prevent us from experiencing joy and connection in the present moment. To let go of a grievance is one of the most profound acts of self-love we can perform. It is crucial to understand that letting go is not the same as condoning. It does not mean what the other person did was okay. It does not require you to reconcile with them or even to tell them they are forgiven. It is a purely internal process. It is the conscious decision to no longer allow a past event to have power over your present peace. It is you, the farmer of your mind, deciding to stop watering the poisonous weed of hatred. It is the moment you decide to put down the heavy, burning bag of rocks you have been carrying for so long, not for their sake, but for yours. You do it so that you can finally walk on, unburdened and free. Even more subtly, we can practice letting go of our rigid expectations and our need to control outcomes. Much of our daily anxiety stems from the gap between our blueprint for reality and reality itself. We have a fixed idea of how our day should go, how our partner should act, how our career should progress. When the messy, unpredictable flow of life fails to conform to our rigid plans, we become frustrated, angry, and anxious. We are trying to command the river of life to flow according to our will. The art of letting go here involves a radical shift in perspective. It is about doing our best, acting with skill and integrity, planting the best seeds we can, but then relinquishing our obsessive attachment to the results. It is the wisdom of the farmer who knows he can control his sowing, but he cannot control the weather. He does his work and then lets go, accepting the outcome with equanimity. This does not mean becoming passive or lazy. It means pouring our full energy into our actions in the present moment, while releasing the anxious need to micromanage the future. This practice cultivates a profound flexibility and resilience. When we are not attached to a single, fixed outcome, we are free to adapt to changing circumstances, to see opportunity in unexpected places, and to find a sense of peace that is not dependent on everything going our way. It is the embodiment of flowing with the truth of Anicca, impermanence. There is a classic story that beautifully illustrates this wisdom. A man was meditating in his small boat on a misty lake. It was a perfectly still and peaceful morning. Suddenly, his boat was violently jolted by another boat, crashing into its side. The man's peace was shattered. He was filled with rage at the carelessness of the other boatman. He stood up, ready to scream a torrent of insults at the person who had so rudely disturbed his meditation. But as he looked, he saw that the other boat was empty. It had simply come unmoored and drifted into him on the current. In that instant, his anger completely vanished. There was no one to be angry at. The story asks a powerful question. How many times in our life do we get enraged by empty boats? An inconsiderate comment from a stressed-out colleague, a driver cutting us off in traffic, a plan that falls through due to unforeseen circumstances. Most of the events that trigger our anger are, in essence, empty boats. They are neutral events, devoid of personal malice. Our suffering comes not from the event itself, but from the story we immediately create about it, the assumption that there is a malicious boatman intentionally trying to ruin our day. Letting go is the practice of learning to see the empty boat. It is the wisdom to pause before reacting, to question our initial story, and to release the anger that has no real target. Ultimately, all these forms of letting go things, of grievances, of outcomes practice for the deepest renunciation of all, letting go of our rigid attachment to the story of me. As we have seen, this solid, separate self is a construct, a story our mind tells itself. We spend our lives defending this fragile character, promoting its virtues and hiding its flaws. This project is the source of our deepest anxieties. To let go, in the most profound sense, is to loosen our grip on this identity. It is to find the courage to be vulnerable, to be imperfect, to not know all the answers. It is to stop needing the world to validate our story. When we unclench our fist from around this precious idea of me, a remarkable thing happens. The tension eases, the fight ends. A vast and peaceful space opens up within us. And what is it that naturally arises to fill this space? What is the quality of a heart that is no longer burdened by the weight of things, the poison of resentment, and the need to defend a fragile ego? The natural state of the unburdened human heart is warmth, openness, and a tender connection to the world. It is the fertile ground from which true compassion, both for ourselves and for all other beings, can finally begin to blossom. The art of letting go creates a profound opening in the landscape of the mind. As we put down the heavy burdens of the past, release our anxious grip on the future, and loosen our attachment to things, outcomes, and even our own rigid identities, a vast and quiet space begins to emerge. But what do we find waiting for us in this newfound stillness? For many of us, the silence is immediately filled by a familiar and unwelcome voice. It is the voice of the inner critic. It is the relentless narrator who has been running a constant commentary on our lives, a voice so pervasive we often mistake it for the truth. It is the part of us that says, "That wasn't good enough. You should have tried harder. Why are you so lazy? You'll never measure up. Look at how much better everyone else is doing." This inner critic is a harsh master, a perfectionist who is never satisfied, a drill sergeant who believes that motivation can only be found through fear and shame. We carry this voice with us everywhere, allowing it to dictate our moods and define our self-worth. It is the source of our deepest-seated anxieties, the feeling of being fundamentally flawed, the constant pressure to prove our worthiness in a world that always seems to demand more. The great paradox and the great tragedy is that we would never dare to speak to another human being the way we speak to ourselves. If a dear friend came to you, distraught over a mistake they made at work, you would not say, "You are such an idiot. You're probably going to get fired, and you deserve it." You would offer them comfort. You would say, "It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. You did your best. This doesn't define you." You would meet their suffering with warmth, understanding, and kindness. Yet, when we ourselves make a mistake, the inner critic is merciless, launching a brutal assault of self-recrimination. This internal warfare is exhausting. It keeps our nervous system in a constant state of threat, preventing us from ever feeling truly safe or at peace. The Buddhist path recognizes that before we can hope to offer genuine kindness to the world, we must first learn how to turn that kindness inward. We must learn how to offer ourselves the same warmth and understanding we so freely give to others. This is the practice of karuna, or compassion. directed toward the one person who needs it most and often receives it least: ourselves. First, it is essential to understand what self-compassion is and what it is not. Karuna is often described as the trembling or quivering of the heart in the face of suffering, coupled with the sincere wish for that suffering to be relieved. Self-compassion, therefore, is the act of turning toward our own pain, our own failures, and our own imperfections with that same tender, trembling heart. It is the practice of becoming our own best friend. This is not the same as self-pity. Self-pity tends to be isolating and self-absorbed. It says, "Poor me," and gets lost in the drama of its own story. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is connecting. It recognizes that suffering, failure, and imperfection are not personal defects, but are intrinsic parts of the shared human experience. Instead of isolating us, it reminds us of our common humanity, whispering, "Yes, this is hard, and everyone finds life hard sometimes." Nor is self-compassion a form of self-indulgence or an excuse for bad behavior. It is not about letting ourselves off the hook or abandoning all discipline. A truly compassionate parent would not let their child eat candy all day and skip school, because they know that would not lead to long-term well-being. Similarly, self-compassion is not about gratifying every whim. It is about asking the wiser question: what is truly kind for me in this moment? What will lead to my genuine and lasting well-being? Sometimes, the most compassionate action is to rest. At other times, the most compassionate action is to get up and exercise, to eat a healthy meal, or to engage in the difficult work we have been avoiding. The difference is the motivation. We engage in these actions not from a place of self-loathing or fear, "I must do this," or "I am a failure," but from a place of deep care and love for ourselves. I will do this because I deserve to be healthy and happy. It also differs from self-esteem. Self-esteem is often conditional, based on our successes and achievements. We feel good about ourselves when we win, when we get praised, when we look good. But what happens when we fail? When we get criticized? When we feel broken? Our self-esteem plummets. Self-compassion is unconditional. It offers its warmth precisely in those moments when we feel we deserve it least. It is a stable, reliable source of inner strength that is not dependent on external validation. The core teaching that illuminates the necessity of this practice is the powerful parable of the second arrow. The Buddha explained that in life, we cannot avoid being struck by the first arrow. This arrow represents the unavoidable, objective pains of existence. We lose a job, a relationship ends, we get sick, we make a mistake, someone speaks a harsh word to us. These things happen, and they hurt. This is the first arrow. Now, for most of us, what happens immediately after being struck by the first arrow? We inflict a second one upon ourselves. This second arrow is our own reaction to the initial pain. It is the arrow of judgment, blame, and self-recrimination. A first arrow of rejection is followed by a second arrow of, "I am unlovable." A first arrow of making a mistake is followed by a second arrow of, "I am a complete failure." A first arrow of physical pain is followed by a second arrow of, "Why me? I can't handle this." This second arrow, the Buddha taught, is optional, and it is almost always more painful and causes more lasting damage than the first. The entire practice of self-compassion is learning how not to shoot the second arrow. It is the courageous ability to stay with the clean, simple pain of the first arrow. Ouch, this hurts. without adding the thick, toxic layer of self-judgment. It is the willingness to feel our pain without making it mean something terrible about who we are. So, how do we actually practice this? How do we intercept that second arrow? The practice can be broken down into 3 core components. The first is mindfulness. We must first be aware that we are suffering. Often, we are so caught up in the drama of our inner critic that we don't even realize the pain we are inflicting on ourselves. Mindfulness allows us to pause and acknowledge what is happening. We can simply say to ourselves, "This is a moment of suffering," or "This is really difficult right now." This simple act of naming creates a space of awareness around the pain, preventing us from being completely consumed by it. It is a moment of clear seeing, without judgment. The second component is common humanity. This is the direct antidote to the shame and isolation that often accompany our struggles. In our moment of pain, after acknowledging it with mindfulness, we can remind ourselves that suffering is a part of life. We can say, "This is part of the human experience," or "I am not alone in feeling this way," or "Many people go through this same struggle." This simple reminder connects us to the great web of humanity. Our pain is no longer a sign of our personal deficiency. It is a testament to our shared, vulnerable existence. It breaks the spell of isolation and allows us to feel a sense of kinship even in our darkest moments. The third, and most active, component is self-kindness. Having acknowledged our pain and connected with our common humanity, we now deliberately offer ourselves warmth and care, just as we would for a friend. There are several powerful ways to do this. One is through soothing physical touch. The body's nervous system has a built-in caregiving system. When we offer ourselves a gentle touch, we activate it. You can try placing a hand over your heart or gently cradling your face in your hands. This simple physical gesture can be incredibly powerful, sending a signal of safety and comfort directly to your nervous system and releasing calming hormones like oxytocin. Another way is to develop a set of compassionate phrases you can repeat to yourself like a mantra. These are personal to you, but might sound something like, "May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I accept myself exactly as I am. May I give myself the compassion that I need." Repeating these phrases, silently or aloud, can begin to overwrite the harsh inner monologue of the critic. A third technique is to actively evoke your own compassionate friend. Imagine a being real, or imaginary, who embodies perfect wisdom, strength, and unconditional love. Imagine what this compassionate friend would say to you about your current situation. What would their tone of voice be? What advice would they offer? Then, see if you can offer those same words with that same tone to yourself. This practice of turning compassion inward is not a quick fix, but a radical reorientation of your entire relationship with yourself. It is a commitment to move from a state of inner conflict to a state of inner friendship. Over time, as you practice meeting your failures, your insecurities, and your pain with mindfulness, a sense of common humanity, and active self-kindness, you will notice a profound shift. The voice of the inner critic will begin to lose its power. It may still arise out of habit, but you will no longer automatically believe it. You will have another voice, a warmer and wiser voice, to offer as an alternative. This creates a deep sense of resilience. Life will still send its first arrows, but you will no longer be so quick to shoot the second, third, and fourth. You will develop a foundation of self-worth that is not dependent on your performance or others' approval. You will have discovered a portable, inexhaustible source of comfort and strength within your own heart. When you learn to fill your own cup in this way, something beautiful and natural begins to happen. A heart that has learned how to care for its own wounds, how to soothe its own fears, become softer, more open, and more available to the world. The walls of defensiveness and insecurity begin to dissolve, and from this full cup, a genuine and effortless compassion for others begins to overflow. The kindness you have cultivated for yourself naturally radiates outward, seeking to soothe the suffering of all those you encounter. The practice of karuna for the self becomes the perfect, necessary foundation for the expansive practice of metta, or loving kindness, for all beings. Having learned to turn inward with the tender gaze of self-compassion, we begin to heal the inner warfare that has defined so much of our lives. By offering ourselves the kindness we so freely give to others, we fill our own cup, perhaps for the first time. The practice of karuna creates a foundation of inner safety and worthiness. From this stable ground, we are now ready for the next expansive movement of the heart. For when our own cup is full, it naturally begins to overflow. The kindness we have cultivated for ourselves seeks expression, radiating outward to touch the world. This outward radiation of unconditional friendliness and goodwill is known as metta, or loving kindness. If self-compassion is the art of becoming our own best friend, metta is the practice of extending that friendship universally, without discrimination and without limit. It is the sincere, heartfelt wish for the well-being and happiness of all beings. It is important to understand that metta is not the sentimental, possessive, or transactional love that we often see in popular culture. It is not romantic love, which is selective and often based on attachment, nor is it a mere liking of people who are pleasant to us. Metta is a universal, impartial benevolence. It is a steady, unconditional warmth, a radical friendliness that we can learn to generate as a state of mind, independent of whether we like or dislike a particular person, or whether they meet our approval. In the context of the 5 hindrances, metta is the direct and powerful antidote to ill will. It is the practice we use to actively dissolve the mental toxins of anger, resentment, jealousy, and judgment. By consciously and repeatedly generating thoughts of loving kindness, we are carving new neural pathways in our brain. We are intentionally weakening the old habitual grooves of negativity and strengthening new pathways of warmth and connection. We are actively retraining our minds to default to a state of openness and kindness, rather than suspicion and hostility. This is not about pretending we don't feel anger or frustration. It is about actively cultivating the opposite quality, giving our mind a healthier, more peaceful place to rest. The formal practice of metta meditation is a beautiful, structured journey that gradually expands the circle of our heart. It typically unfolds in 5 stages. We begin, as always, with ourselves. After all, we cannot sincerely wish for others what we are unwilling to offer to our own being. Finding a comfortable posture, we can bring to mind our own image, perhaps placing a hand over our heart to enhance the feeling of warmth and connection. Then, we silently repeat a series of simple, benevolent phrases. The classic phrases are, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I live with ease." As you repeat these phrases, the goal is not just to say the words mechanically, but to genuinely try to connect with the intention behind them. Try to feel a sense of warmth, of gentle friendliness, suffusing your own body and mind. If you find this difficult, that is perfectly normal. Simply wish it for yourself as best you can. This first stage is the essential foundation, reinforcing the self-compassion we have already begun to cultivate. In the second stage, we bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend. This should be someone for whom it is very easy to feel love and gratitude, a mentor, a cherished family member, a beloved pet, Picture them clearly in your mind's eye. See them smiling and happy. Then, direct the very same phrases of loving kindness toward them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Allow your heart to open, to feel the natural warmth and appreciation you have for this being. Let the feeling of metta flow from you to them. This stage helps us to generate the feeling of loving kindness in a strong and uncomplicated way, creating a radiant energy that we can then carry into the more challenging stages of the practice. The third stage is where the practice begins to stretch us. Here, we bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you have no strong feelings, positive or negative. It could be the cashier at your grocery store, the person who delivers your mail, or someone you pass on your commute. We so often move through the world seeing other people as mere background characters in our own movie, hardly noticing their existence. This stage directly challenges that indifference. You bring the image of this neutral person to mind. Acknowledge their humanity, their own hopes, fears, and desire for happiness, and you extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. In doing so, you begin to break down the artificial walls between me and them. You are training your heart to see every being as worthy of care and kindness, dissolving the habit of indifference. The fourth stage is the most transformative and often the most difficult. Here, we are invited to bring to mind a difficult person. It is wise to start with someone you find only mildly irritating, rather than someone who is the source of deep trauma. It could be a co-worker who gets on your nerves, or a neighbor who is inconsiderate. The practice here is not to force yourself to feel a gushing affection or to condone their harmful behavior. That would be inauthentic. The practice is simply to try, as best you can, to wish for them to be well. May you be safe. May you be happy. A particularly helpful aspiration for a difficult person is, may you be free from suffering. This is a profound shift in perspective. It allows us to see that people who act in harmful ways are almost always acting from their own deep pain and confusion. By wishing for them to be free from their suffering, we are wishing for the very cause of their harmful behavior to cease. This practice is not for their benefit, it is for ours. It is the ultimate act of letting go of resentment, the final step in removing the hot coal of anger from our own heart. Finally, in the fifth stage, we allow our loving kindness to become boundless. Having moved from the self to the friend, to the neutral person, and to the difficult person, we now break down all barriers. We imagine our heart radiating this warmth and goodwill in all directions, forward, backward, left, right, above, and below. We extend it to all beings, without exception. May all beings in this building be happy. May all beings in this city be happy. May all beings in this country, this continent, this world be happy. We include all humans, regardless of their background. We include all animals, from the largest whale to the smallest insect. We radiate metta to all beings seen and unseen, near and far, born and yet to be born. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be healthy. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings everywhere live with ease. This final stage dissolves the last vestiges of the separate self, connecting us to the vast, interdependent web of all life, fostering a profound sense of unity and boundless compassion. There is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates the protective power of metta. His jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to assassinate him by releasing a ferocious, intoxicated elephant named Nalagiri into his path. As the raging elephant charged, creating terror and chaos, the Buddha's attendant, Ananda, tried to shield him, but the Buddha simply stood his ground. He did not run, and he did not fight. Instead, he radiated a powerful, unwavering field of pure loving kindness toward the charging beast. The story says that as the elephant entered this field of metta, its rage dissolved, its steps slowed, its aggression vanished, and it approached the Buddha, completely tamed, and knelt at his feet. This story is a potent metaphor. Metta has the power not only to soothe the angry elephants in the world around us, the difficult people, and challenging situations, but more importantly, it has the power to tame the raging elephant of our own inner demons, our own fear, our own anger, and our own hatred. It is the ultimate shield, a soft and permeable shield that does not repel the world, but transforms it through the power of unconditional love. By practicing metta, both in formal meditation and informally throughout our day silently, wishing well to the people we pass on the street, we fundamentally alter our relationship with the world. We move from a defensive crouch to an open-hearted embrace. Our interactions become smoother, our social anxiety lessens, and our sense of isolation melts away. With a heart now fortified by the inner strength of self-compassion and softened by the expansive warmth of loving kindness, we are far better equipped to meet the inevitable challenges of life. We now possess the inner resources to approach our own difficult emotions, not as enemies to be crushed, but as valuable messengers to be welcomed and understood with wisdom. With a heart made stronger by self-compassion and more open by the practice of loving kindness, we find ourselves in a new relationship with the world. We are more resilient, more connected, and more grounded in a fundamental sense of goodwill. And yet, life continues to be life. The first arrows will still fly. The world will still present us with situations that trigger deep and powerful emotions. Anger, fear, jealousy, grief, and despair will still knock on our door. They are an inescapable part of the human inheritance. The crucial difference now is not that these visitors no longer arrive, but that we are far better equipped to receive them. We no longer need to slam the door in their face or be thrown out of our own house by their arrival. We can learn to meet them with wisdom, courage, and grace. Our conventional strategy for dealing with difficult emotions is usually one of warfare. We treat them as hostile invaders, and our tactics are typically twofold. The first is suppression. We feel a surge of anger or a pang of fear, and we immediately push it down. We tell ourselves to be positive, to get over it. We distract ourselves with work, with food, with entertainment, with anything to avoid the discomfort of what we are feeling. We stuff the emotion into the basement of our consciousness, hoping it will disappear. But emotions are energy. They do not simply vanish. The anger we suppress does not die. It festers, turning into resentment or depression. The fear we ignore does not leave. It morphs into a chronic, low-grade anxiety. The emotion we push into the basement simply starts lifting weights, waiting for an opportunity to burst back out, stronger and more uncontrollable than before. Our other common tactic is the opposite: unrestrained expression. We become completely identified with the emotion and act it out. We feel anger, and so we become anger, lashing out with sharp words, yelling and blaming. We feel fear, and we become fear, spiraling into panic and catastrophizing. While this may feel like a temporary release, it is ultimately a destructive strategy. We often cause harm to others and create situations we later regret. More importantly, by indulging the emotion in this way, we are deeply reinforcing the neural pathway. We are training our minds to react in that exact same way the next time the trigger appears. Both suppression and unrestrained expression are born from the same root, a fear of the emotion itself. The Buddhist path offers a radical third way, a middle path that is neither at war with our emotions nor a slave to them. It is the path of mindful, compassionate acceptance. This third way begins with a revolutionary shift in perspective. What if our difficult emotions are not enemies to be vanquished, but are actually messengers, carrying vital information from the deeper parts of ourselves? What if they are a form of innate intelligence, trying to communicate an unmet need? From this viewpoint, anger is often a messenger trying to tell us that a boundary has been violated or that something we deeply value is being threatened. Its message is not necessarily attack, but simply pay attention. Something important is happening here. Fear is a messenger from our ancient survival system, trying to protect us from potential harm. Its message is not panic and hide, but be careful. Assess this situation wisely. Grief is a messenger that speaks of love. Its presence is a testament to the depth of our connection to what we have lost. Its message is not despair, but this being, this experience, was precious. When we can learn to see our emotions as messengers rather than monsters, our entire orientation changes. We move from aversion to curiosity, from conflict to communication. We don't have to blindly obey the messenger's frantic advice, but we can, and should, at least have the courage to open the door and receive the message it carries. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful and powerful analogy for how to practice this. He taught us to care for our anger and all difficult emotions as we would care for a crying baby. Imagine you are in your home and you hear your baby crying in the other room. You would not ignore the cry, nor would you yell at the baby to be quiet. That would be cruel and ineffective. Your natural instinct is to go to the baby, pick it up gently, and hold it in your arms. This provides the blueprint for our practice. The first step is to simply acknowledge the crying. When a strong emotion like anger arises, we pause and recognize its presence with mindfulness. We can say to ourselves, "Ah, hello anger, I see you are here." We are not judging it or pushing it away. We are simply acknowledging that the baby is crying. The second step is to pick up the baby. This means turning our full attention towards the emotion, not away from it. We do this by bringing our awareness into the body and locating the physical sensations of the emotion. Where does this anger live in your body? Is it a burning sensation in your stomach, a tightness in your shoulders and jaw, a pressure behind your eyes? We gently place our awareness directly on these raw physical energies, picking them up with our attention. The third and most crucial step is to hold the baby with tenderness. This is where we bring the qualities of karuna and metta, self-compassion and loving kindness, to our own pain. We hold the physical sensations of the emotion in a spacious, warm, and non-judgmental awareness. We breathe with it. We can even imagine our breath surrounding the tightness or the heat with a soft, gentle energy. We are not trying to force the feeling to go away. Our only job is to hold it with unconditional kindness and presence. Just as a crying infant is often soothed simply by the warmth and steady presence of its parent, our turbulent emotions are often calmed simply by being held in the cradle of our own compassionate attention. We are offering the crying child within us the safety and acceptance it needs. Once the initial intensity of the emotion has been soothed by our mindful presence, once the baby's crying has softened to a whimper, we can move to the fourth step, gently listening to the baby. We can now inquire with genuine curiosity what the emotion needs. We can ask silently in our own hearts, "Hello, anger. What are you trying to protect? Hello, Fear. What is it that feels threatened? Hello. Sadness. What is the loss you are grieving? We listen patiently for an answer, which may come not in words, but in a deeper feeling or insight. Perhaps the anger is protecting a feeling of vulnerability. Perhaps the fear is revealing a deep-seated need for security. By listening in this way, we get to the root of the issue, the unmet need that is giving rise to the painful emotion in the first place. As we hold our emotions in this tender, mindful embrace, we begin to directly witness the truth of impermanence in action. We see that anger, fear, or grief is not a solid, monolithic entity. It is a wave of energy. It arises, it gathers strength, it peaks, and if we do not add more fuel to it with our stories of blame and fear, it will naturally, in its own time, subside and transform. We learn that we are not the wave. We are the vast, deep ocean in which all waves, big and small, arise and pass away. This realization is profoundly liberating. We are no longer identified with our emotions, no longer a victim of our own moods. This entire process creates a sacred pause between the emotional stimulus and our behavioral response. In this pause, we find our freedom. The messenger arrives with its urgent, often frantic news. We listen. We hold it with compassion. We hear its underlying message, and then we can choose how to respond. Instead of blindly reacting by yelling at our partner, we can feel the anger, recognize it is protecting a feeling of being unheard, and then choose to express our needs in a calm, clear, and constructive way. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, we can feel the fear, acknowledge its desire to keep us safe, and then choose to take one small, courageous step forward. We are no longer slaves to the raw emotion, but have become wise stewards of our own inner world. This ability to see even our most powerful feelings as transient, non-solid phenomena becomes much easier when we apply this same insight to all of reality. If our inner world is a shimmering, impermanent flow, what about the outer world? This inquiry invites us to look even more deeply into the very fabric of existence, leading us to the subtle and liberating wisdom of emptiness. Having learned to hold our own difficult emotions with a tender and mindful embrace, we begin to see them not as solid, terrifying enemies, but as transient waves of energy that rise and fall within us. This insight prepares us for one of the most profound and subtle teachings of the Buddhist path, a wisdom that has the power to fundamentally alter our perception of ourselves and the world. This is the wisdom of emptiness, or sunyata. Now, the word emptiness can be frightening. It conjures images of a cold, meaningless void, a nihilistic abyss where nothing matters. It is absolutely crucial to understand from the very beginning that this is not what Buddhist emptiness means. Emptiness is not a synonym for nothingness. Rather, it means empty of something very specific. It means all things are empty of a separate, independent, unchanging self, or essence. The opposite of emptiness is not fullness, it is separateness. In a profound paradox, the teaching of emptiness does not point to a void, but to a vibrant, dynamic, and radical interconnectedness. It reveals that nothing exists on its own, but that everything is intimately woven into a magnificent, interdependent web of existence. It means everything is full of everything else. To grasp this, let us use a simple, concrete example offered by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. Let us look deeply at a single sheet of paper. On the surface, it appears to be a separate, self-contained object. But if we look with the eyes of wisdom, what do we see? First, we can see a cloud floating in the sky. Without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, trees cannot grow. And without trees, We cannot make paper, so the cloud is undeniably present in this sheet of paper. If we take the cloud out of the paper cannot exist. Now, look again, and you can see the sunshine. The sun is essential for the tree's growth through photosynthesis. The energy of the sun is locked into the very fibers of the paper. So, the sunshine is also in the paper. Look further, and you see the lumberjack who cut down the tree. You see his parents, and their parents before them. You see the wheat that made the bread he ate for breakfast, and the farmer who grew the wheat. You see the miners who extracted the iron ore to make his axe. You see the people who designed and built the trucks that carried the wood, and the roads they drove upon. You see the person in the factory who turned the pulp into this sheet. You see the ideas and the language that allow you and I to call this paper. If you continue this investigation, you will see that the entire cosmos, in all its complexity and history, has conspired in this very moment to bring this sheet of paper into being. It is empty of a separate self. It cannot exist by itself. It can only interbe with everything else. This quality of interconnectedness, this interbeing, is the true meaning of emptiness. Now, let us turn this powerful lens of inspection upon ourselves. We walk around with such a strong feeling of being a separate me, but just like the sheet of paper, if we look deeply, we see that this me is empty of any separate, independent existence. You are made of non-you elements. You are made of the sun, the clouds, and the earth through the food you have eaten. You are made of your parents, your ancestors, and the DNA they passed down. You are made of the teachers who taught you, the friends who have shaped you, the culture that has influenced you. The very air you are breathing in this moment is a gift from the trees and the phytoplankton in the ocean. The thoughts you think are formed from a language you did not invent. Everything you call you is a confluence of the entire universe. Your skin is not a wall separating you from the world. It is a porous membrane through which the world constantly flows. Realizing this dissolves the painful illusion of isolation. The feeling of being a small, lonely self, struggling against a vast and indifferent universe, begins to melt away. You are not in the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself in this temporary, precious form. This wisdom has profound practical implications for how we deal with our problems and our suffering. We tend to treat our problems as solid, separate entities. We talk about my anxiety, my depression, my anger, as if it is a monstrous, independent thing that has taken up residence inside us. We create a duality. There is me, and there is this problem that is afflicting me. This immediately sets up a state of internal warfare. But what happens when we look at our anxiety with the eyes of emptiness? We see that anxiety is not a single, solid thing. It is a composite phenomenon, made of non-anxiety elements. It is made of certain thoughts about the future. It is made of physical sensations in the body, a rapid heartbeat, a tightness in the chest. It is made of our past experiences, our diet, our sleep patterns, the news we consume. When we deconstruct it in this way, we see that anxiety is a label we give to a temporary confluence of causes and conditions. It has no independent, solid existence. It is a process, not a thing. This insight dramatically changes our relationship to it. You cannot fight a fog, but you can understand the conditions of temperature and humidity that give rise to it. When we see our problems as fluid, interdependent processes, they lose their terrifying, monstrous quality. The weight of our suffering becomes lighter because we see It is not a solid, personal burden we must carry, but a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of our awareness. This is often illustrated with the beautiful metaphor of the wave and the ocean. Imagine a single wave on the surface of the sea. From its own limited perspective, the wave has a distinct identity. It has a birth as it swells up from the deep, a life as it travels across the surface, and a death as it crashes upon the shore. It can be a small wave or a large wave. It can look at other waves and feel jealous of their size or proud of its own. It can live in fear of its inevitable end. This is the perspective of the ego, the separate self. But what happens when the wave awakens to its true nature? It realizes, I am not just a wave. My true substance is water. In that moment of realization, its fear of birth and death vanishes. The waveform was always temporary, but its essential nature, water, is vast, deep, and eternal, shared by every other wave. Its beginning was not a true beginning, and its end is not a true end. It is simply the ocean changing its form. We are these waves. Our individual personalities, our life stories, our successes and failures, these are the temporary forms we take. But our true nature, our substance, is the vast ocean of life itself, the boundless consciousness we share with all beings. When we realize we are the ocean, the anxieties of the individual wave lose their ultimate power over us. The wisdom of emptiness, or interbeing, is therefore not a bleak philosophy of nothingness. It is the ultimate antidote to the alienation that is so characteristic of modern life. It gently but completely dismantles the illusion that we are separate. It shows us that our well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of the cloud, the forest, the lumberjack, and every other being. It replaces the anxiety of the separate self with the peace of profound belonging. This deep understanding of interconnectedness has radical implications for how we live. If our happiness is not found in building up and defending a separate self, what does this say about our society's frantic obsession with accumulating separate possessions and achievements? This wisdom directly challenges the very foundations of materialism and invites us to discover a completely different and far more satisfying kind of richness. The profound wisdom of emptiness reveals a universe of radical interconnectedness, a seamless fabric of interbeing. It shows us that we are not isolated fragments, but expressions of the entire cosmos. This realization strikes at the very root of the modern world's most pervasive and cherished belief, the belief that our happiness, security, and worth can be found through the accumulation of external things. Our society is built upon a single, powerful promise. You can purchase your way to peace. If you are feeling empty, buy a new car. If you are feeling insecure, buy a bigger house. If you are feeling bored, buy the latest phone. We are relentlessly encouraged to look for satisfaction outside of ourselves, in the marketplace. This endless pursuit of happiness through acquisition is the engine of materialism, and it is a psychological trap of immense and tragic proportions. This trap is best described by a concept known as the hedonic treadmill. Imagine running on a treadmill. You are expending enormous energy. You are constantly in motion, but you are not actually going anywhere. This is the precise nature of the search for happiness through materialism. You desire a particular object or experience, believing it will finally bring you lasting contentment. After much effort, you acquire it. For a brief period, you experience a surge of pleasure, a thrill of novelty, but very quickly, a process of psychological adaptation begins. The new car becomes just your car. The thrill fades. The new level of comfort becomes your new baseline, your new normal. And soon, the old familiar feeling of discontent returns. Only now you need a newer, better, more expensive object to get that same fleeting hit of pleasure. You are back on the treadmill, running faster now, but still getting nowhere. This cycle is a direct expression of the insatiable thirst of tanha, and it is a recipe for perpetual anxiety. We are constantly comparing what we have with what others have, always feeling a sense of lack, always striving for a future moment of satisfaction that, by its very nature, can never be permanent. It is a game that is rigged against us, a race with no finish line. The Buddhist path offers a radical way to step off this exhausting treadmill. It is not a condemnation of wealth or a demand for a life of harsh poverty. It is a fundamental redefinition of richness itself. It is the wisdom of contentment, of appreciating what is already present, rather than obsessively focusing on what is absent. The central insight is this: true wealth is not having more possessions, but having fewer wants. Let that sink in. A person who lives a simple life but desires nothing is infinitely richer and more at peace than a billionaire who is consumed by the anxiety of acquiring more or the fear of losing what he has. This is not a philosophy of resignation. It is a declaration of freedom. It is freedom from the tyranny of more, freedom from the endless anxiety of comparison, freedom from the stress of debt, and freedom from the gnawing feeling that you are not enough because you do not have enough. It is about discovering an inner source of well-being that is not for sale, a richness that cannot be measured by a bank account. How do we cultivate this inner richness? The primary tool, the direct antidote to the wanting mind of materialism, is the practice of gratitude. The wanting mind and the grateful mind cannot occupy the same space at the same time. The wanting mind scans the horizon for what is missing. The grateful mind scans the present moment for what is abundant. Gratitude is a skill, a way of training our attention to see the profound gifts that we so often take for granted. This is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about consciously shifting our focus to the goodness that coexists with life's difficulties. You can begin this practice in a very simple way. Each day, perhaps before you go to sleep, take a few moments to reflect on 3 specific things for which you are genuinely grateful. The key here is specificity. Instead of a general thought, like "I'm grateful for my family," you might focus on "I'm grateful for the way my partner listened to me today," or "I'm grateful for the sound of my child's laughter." This specificity brings the feeling of gratitude to life. We can also practice sensory gratitude, opening ourselves to the simple miracles of being alive that we so often overlook. Can you feel a sense of gratitude for the simple fact that you can see colors, for the astonishing gift of hearing, for the taste of clean water when you are thirsty, for the feeling of a warm blanket on a cool night? Can you feel a wave of gratitude for the simple, rhythmic miracle of your own breath, this constant companion that has sustained you every moment of your life without ever asking for anything in return? By turning our attention to these fundamental gifts, we begin to realize that we are already the beneficiaries of an incredible, unearned fortune. We start to notice the quiet abundance that surrounds us, an abundance that no amount of money can buy. This practice actively rewires our brain, creating new habits of thought that counteract our culture's relentless messaging of lack and scarcity. We move from a mindset of poverty, which is the feeling of always needing more, to a mindset of true wealth, which is the deep knowing that what we have right now is enough. There is a classic story from ancient Greece that powerfully illustrates this principle. Alexander the Great, the young conqueror who had amassed more power and material wealth than any man of his time, was traveling through Corinth. He heard of a famously wise but eccentric philosopher named Diogenes, who lived a life of extreme simplicity, possessing nothing but the clothes he wore and a simple clay pot for drinking. Curious, Alexander, surrounded by his retinue of powerful generals, went to find him. He found Diogenes relaxing in the morning sun. Standing over him, casting a great shadow, Alexander said, "I am Alexander the Great. I can give you anything you desire. Name it, and it shall be yours." Diogenes looked up at the most powerful man in the world and replied simply, "Yes, you can stand a little to one side. You are blocking my sunlight." In that moment, the entire illusion of wealth and power was shattered. The man who had everything, Alexander, was revealed to be the poor one, still restlessly seeking to acquire more. The man who had nothing, Diogenes, was revealed to be the truly rich one, for he already possessed something that Alexander could not give him: contentment. He wanted for nothing, not even from the king of the world. This is the freedom that awaits when we shift our focus from external acquisition to internal appreciation. We discover a treasure within that cannot be devalued or stolen. We find a sense of sufficiency that is unshakable because it is not dependent on the fickle fortunes of the external world. When we are no longer frantically trying to fill an inner void with things, or desperately trying to prove our worth to others through our possessions, a profound change occurs in the very way we carry ourselves and communicate. Our words are no longer driven by the need to impress, to compete, to boast of our acquisitions, or to complain about what we lack. Having found a quiet richness within, our speech can begin to flow from a place of peace, sufficiency, and authenticity. We can begin to use our words not to get something from the world, but to offer something to it. Having discovered a profound sense of inner richness that is not dependent on external possessions, our relationship with the world begins to transform. The frantic need to acquire, to compete, and to prove our worth begins to subside. This inner contentment creates the necessary foundation for the next essential element of the path, a practice that governs how we interact with others and shape our shared reality. This is the practice of right speech, or samavacha. We often underestimate the power of our words. We treat them as fleeting and inconsequential, as mere puffs of air or pixels on a screen. But from a Buddhist perspective, speech is a potent and creative force. Words are karmic actions of immense significance. A single word can start a war or begin a peace process. It can shatter a person's confidence or inspire them to achieve greatness. Our words have the power to build worlds of harmony and trust, or worlds of conflict and despair. In our modern age, this domain of speech has expanded exponentially. It is not just what we say with our mouths. It is every text message we send, every email we compose, every comment we post, every article we share. Each digital utterance is a seed we plant in the collective consciousness, a seed that will bear fruit for ourselves and for others. To walk the path of wisdom, we must become exquisitely mindful of this power, learning to use our words not as weapons of the ego, but as instruments of clarity, kindness, and peace. To understand what right speech is, it is often helpful to first clearly identify what it is not. The teachings outline 4 primary forms of wrong speech that we are encouraged to abandon. The first is false speech, or lying. We lie for many reasons: to gain an advantage, to avoid punishment, to protect our image, or to manipulate others. But every lie, no matter how small, entangles us in a web of complexity. We must then remember the lie, and often tell further lies to support the first one. It creates a stressful, fragile reality that we must constantly maintain. More damagingly, lying erodes the foundation of trust, both with others and with ourselves. When we habitually deceive others, we begin to lose touch with our own inner sense of integrity. We create a fundamental disconnect between our inner world and our outer expression, a dissonance that is a deep source of unease. Committing to telling the truth, even when it is difficult, simplifies our lives profoundly and builds a bedrock of self-respect. The second form of wrong speech is slanderous or divisive speech. This is the use of words to set people against one another, to poison one person's mind against another. It is the insidious nature of gossip that seeks to damage someone's reputation behind their back. In our modern world, this form of speech has become a global epidemic. We see it in the political rhetoric that paints the other side as monstrous and evil. We see it in the online echo chambers that thrive on us versus them thinking. We see it in office politics and social cliques. Divisive speech is a potent poison because it attacks the very fabric of community. It feeds on negativity, suspicion, and conflict. When we engage in it, we are not only harming the person we are speaking about, we are contributing to a more fearful and fragmented world. And we are conditioning our own minds to see others as adversaries rather than as fellow human beings. The third form is harsh or abusive speech. This is the language of anger and hatred. It includes obvious forms like yelling, insulting, and name-calling. But it also includes more subtle forms like cruel sarcasm, belittling comments, and passive aggression. In the anonymous realm of the internet, this has morphed into the phenomenon of trolling, where people feel emboldened to unleash torrents of abuse they would never dare to speak face to face. Engaging in harsh speech is like throwing acid. It burns the one who is touched by it, but it also severely burns the one who throws it. It is always a sign that we have been overwhelmed by our own pain and are now exporting that pain onto someone else. A crucial aspect of this practice is to recognize that harsh speech can also be directed inward. The relentless voice of the inner critic, which we have already explored, is a form of abusive speech. When we call ourselves stupid, worthless, or a failure, we are engaging in wrong speech and causing ourselves profound harm. The commitment to right speech must include a ceasefire in this internal war. The fourth and final form of wrong speech is idle chatter. This may seem harmless compared to the others, but it is considered a significant obstacle to a peaceful mind. Idle chatter is empty, aimless, and useless talk. It is gossip about celebrities, endless complaints about the weather, speculation about things we know nothing about, and the constant narration of trivialities. It is speech that does not serve to inform, to connect, or to uplift. Why is this a problem? Because it clutters the mind and dissipates our precious mental energy. A mind that is constantly engaged in trivial chatter is like a leaky bucket. It cannot hold the focus and clarity needed for deeper insight. In the digital age, this has taken the form of mindless scrolling through social media feeds, consuming and sharing an endless stream of non-essential information. This constant stimulation keeps the mind in a state of superficial agitation, preventing it from ever settling into a state of deep, restorative peace. Having understood what to avoid, we can now turn to the constructive practice of cultivating right speech. The path offers a beautiful and practical filter, sometimes described as passing our words through 4 gates before we allow them to leave our lips. The first gate is it true? Before we speak, and especially before we share something online, we must pause and ask ourselves if what we are about to say is factually accurate to the best of our knowledge. This simple gate, if applied universally, would halt the spread of misinformation and rumors that cause so much confusion and harm. It is a commitment to being a source of clarity, not confusion. If the words pass through the first gate, they arrive at the second. Is it kind? This gate asks us to examine our intention. A statement can be true, but it can be delivered with the intention to wound, to humiliate, or to assert our own superiority. This gate encourages us to find a way to speak the truth with a compassionate heart. It asks, not just is it true, but is it helpful to say this true thing? If we must offer criticism or difficult feedback, can we do it in a way that is constructive, respectful, and genuinely aimed at the other person's well-being? This is the gate that protects relationships and ensures our words are instruments of healing, not harm. Having passed through the gates of truth and kindness, our words arrive at the third gate. Is it useful? A comment might be both true and kind, but completely unnecessary. This is the gate that filters out idle chatter. It asks, does this need to be said right now? Will this contribute something positive to the conversation or the situation? Will it help anyone? This gate helps us to conserve our energy and to make our communication more purposeful and meaningful. It encourages us to speak only when we have something of value to offer. Finally, if the words have passed through the first three gates, they must pass through the fourth and final gate. Is it the right time and place? This is the gate of skillfulness and sensitivity. A true, kind, and useful piece of advice offered at the wrong time, for example, in front of a large group of people, or when the other person is angry and defensive, will likely be rejected. The same words, spoken privately and at a time when the other person is calm and receptive, could be life-changing. This gate teaches us patience and situational awareness. It is the wisdom to know not only what to say, but also when and when not to say it. This practice of filtering our own expression is only one half of skillful communication. The other half, which is equally important, is the practice of deep listening. Most of the time, when we are in a conversation, we are not truly listening. We are listening to reply. Our minds are busy formulating our counter-argument, thinking of a similar story to share, or judging what the other person is saying. Deep listening, in contrast, is the practice of listening with the sole intention of understanding. It is a form of meditation where the object of our focus is the other person. We listen with a quiet, open, and non-judgmental attention. We listen not only for the words they are speaking, but for the feelings that lie beneath the words. We listen for their unmet needs, their hidden hopes, their silent pain. When we offer someone the gift of our deep listening, we are offering them a profound form of validation. We are telling them, I see you, I hear you, you matter. This practice has the power to de-escalate conflict, to heal relationships, and to create moments of true human connection. The Greek philosopher Socrates provided a timeless parable for this practice. One day, an acquaintance ran up to him excitedly and said, "Socrates, do you know what I just heard about one of your friends?" "Hold on a moment," Socrates replied. "Before you tell me, I'd like you to pass a little test. It is called the test of the 3 sieves. The first sieve," he explained, "is the sieve of truth. Are you absolutely sure that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man admitted that he had only heard it from someone else and wasn't sure. "All right," said Socrates. "Let's try the second sieve, the sieve of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me about my friend something good?" "No. On the contrary," the man said. "So," Socrates continued, "you want to tell me something bad about him, even though you're not certain it's true. Let us still try the third sieve, the sieve of usefulness. Is what you want to tell me going to be useful to me?" The man replied, "No, not really." "Well," concluded Socrates, "if what you want to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor useful, why tell it to me at all? This ancient wisdom is the perfect encapsulation of right speech. Before we speak, before we post, before we share, let us run our words through these 3 sieves. By doing so, we not only protect others from harm, we protect ourselves from the karmic consequences of unskillful speech, and we contribute to a saner, kinder, and more peaceful world. Our words have created our reality thus far, but our skillful words, aligned with our deepest values, must be followed by skillful deeds. Speech alone is not enough. Right speech must walk hand in hand with right action. As we cultivate a mind of contentment and learn to use our words as instruments of peace, we arrive at the next crucial stage of our journey, bringing this wisdom into the realm of our physical deeds. The integrity of the spiritual path is measured not by the beauty of our words or the depth of our philosophical understanding, but by the way we move through the world, by the tangible impact of our actions. Right speech must be embodied by right action. They are 2 sides of the same coin, reflecting a life lived in harmony with our deepest values. This is the practice of samakamanta, or right action, the 3rd element of the training in ethical conduct. Like right speech, this is not a set of rigid commandments handed down by an external authority. It is a practical and compassionate guide for how to navigate the complexities of life in a way that minimizes the harm we cause to others and, consequently, to ourselves. By choosing to act in ways that are non-harming, we create a safe harbor for our own minds, freeing them from the turbulent waters of guilt, remorse, and fear, allowing for the cultivation of deeper states of peace and clarity. The traditional formulation of right action is based on 3 fundamental precepts: to abstain from taking life, to abstain from taking what is not given, and to abstain from sexual misconduct. While these may sound simple, when we examine them through a modern lens, they unfold into a profound and far-reaching ethical framework that challenges us to live with greater mindfulness and integrity in every area of our lives. The first precept, abstaining from taking life, is the foundation of a non-violent life. At its most basic level, it is a clear and uncompromising commitment not to kill other human beings. But the spirit of this precept extends much further, inviting us into a relationship of reverence and respect for all sentient life. It asks us to recognize that every living creature, from the largest animal to the smallest insect, shares our own fundamental desire to live and to avoid pain. This perspective naturally calls our daily habits into question. It prompts a deep inquiry into our food choices, asking us to consider the immense suffering involved in industrial animal agriculture. For many, this leads to the practice of vegetarianism or veganism, not as a moralistic stance, but as a direct, personal expression of the principle of non-harming. But the inquiry doesn't stop there. In our interconnected world, this precept compels us to examine our broader impact on the planet's ecosystems. Our consumer choices, the products we buy, the energy we consume, the waste we generate, all have consequences that lead to the destruction of habitats and the extinction of species. To practice abstaining from taking life in the 21st century is to practice ecological awareness. It is to recognize that the health of the planet and the well-being of all its creatures are not separate from our own. It is to make conscious choices that support sustainability and reduce our harmful footprint. It is to cultivate a heart that feels a kinship with all of life, a heart that understands that to harm any part of the web of existence is to ultimately harm ourselves. The second precept is abstaining from taking what is not given or not stealing. Again, the surface meaning is clear. We do not take the physical property of others. But the spirit of this precept invites a much deeper investigation into the nature of fairness, respect, and generosity. Stealing is not just about shoplifting or burglary. Are we stealing time from our employer by scrolling through social media when we are supposed to be working? Are we stealing attention and presence from our children or our partner by being lost in our phones during a conversation? In the digital realm, are we stealing intellectual property by pirating software, music, or films without compensating their creators? On a global scale, this precept forces us to confront the uncomfortable truths of our economic systems. Are the cheap goods we enjoy made possible by stealing the fair wages, safe working conditions, and natural resources of people in other parts of the world? To practice not taking what is not given is to commit to a life of honesty and fair exchange. It also illuminates the positive counterpart of not stealing, the joyful practice of giving, or dana. We can practice generosity by giving of our material resources, but also by freely giving our time, our full attention, our encouragement, and our expertise. By cultivating a generous heart, we counteract the mind of scarcity and greed, and we discover the deep joy that comes from contributing to the well-being of others, recognizing that true wealth is not what we keep, but what we give away. The third precept is abstaining from sexual misconduct. In a world that often treats sexuality as either a taboo subject or a commodity for casual consumption, this precept invites us to bring mindfulness, kindness, and profound respect into this powerful area of human life. At its core, this is about refraining from any sexual act that causes harm to ourselves or to others. This includes any form of exploitation, coercion, or deceit. It means being honest and transparent with our partners and never using another person solely for our own physical gratification, disregarding their feelings and well-being. It is a deep commitment to the principle of consent, ensuring that any sexual encounter is entered into with the enthusiastic, clear, and uncoerced agreement of all involved. In a broader sense, this precept asks us to examine our relationship with sexual energy itself. Are we consuming media, such as pornography, that objectifies others and promotes unrealistic or harmful views of sexuality? Are we using sex as a way to escape from our feelings or to fill a sense of inner emptiness? Right action in the realm of sexuality is about cultivating a healthy, respectful, and integrated approach, one that honors the potential for deep connection and intimacy while remaining steadfastly committed to the principle of non-harming. While these three precepts provide a powerful ethical foundation, right action is not just a passive list of things to avoid. It is also the active and joyful engagement in wholesome, helpful, and compassionate deeds. We do not need to wait for a grand opportunity to be a hero. The practice of right action is woven into the fabric of our ordinary days through countless small choices and gestures. It is holding a door open for a stranger. It is stopping to pick up a piece of litter on the sidewalk. It is offering a genuine and specific compliment to a colleague. It is taking the time to truly listen to a friend who is struggling. It is the conscious choice to buy a product that is ethically sourced. Each of these small actions, seemingly insignificant on its own, is a powerful seed planted in the world. It creates a small ripple of positive energy, a tiny tear in the fabric of indifference, and it conditions our own heart and mind towards goodness, making the next compassionate act even more natural and spontaneous. It is easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of suffering in the world, to feel that our small, individual actions are meaningless in the face of vast, systemic problems. This feeling of helplessness can lead to cynicism and inaction. There is a beautiful modern parable that speaks directly to this state of mind. A young man was walking along a beach at dawn and saw, in the distance, an old man who appeared to be dancing. As he got closer, he saw that the old man was not dancing, but was carefully picking up starfish, one by one, from the sand where they had been stranded by the tide, and gently tossing them back into the ocean. The young man approached him and said, "Sir, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there are thousands of starfish on this beach. You can't possibly save them all. What you are doing doesn't really make a difference." The old man smiled, bent down, picked up another starfish, and as he tossed it into the safety of the waves, he looked at the young man and said, "It made a difference to that one." This is the spirit of right action. We cannot single-handedly solve climate change, end poverty, or eradicate war. But we can make a difference to that one. We can offer a kind word to that person. We can perform that small act of service. We can make that single ethical choice. Our task is not to save the entire world, but to bring as much compassion and skill as we can to our own small corner of it. In doing so, we discover that our actions are never meaningless. Living a life of right action, like all aspects of this path, is a practice, not a standard of perfection. There will be times when we fall short, when we act out of our old habits of greed, anger, and confusion. The invitation, in those moments, is not for self-flagellation, but for self-compassion. We acknowledge our mistake, we learn from it, we make amends if necessary, and we renew our commitment to do better. Our sincere intention to walk this path of harmlessness is what matters most. To sustain this commitment, to consistently choose the skillful action over the easy one in a world that moves at a frantic pace, and so often rewards selfishness, requires a specific and powerful inner quality. It requires the ability to endure delays without frustration, to face difficulties without giving up, and to approach our own slow progress with a gentle and forgiving heart. This essential quality, this quiet superpower in our age of instant gratification, is the virtue of patience. As we commit to a life of right speech and right action, weaving our deepest values into the fabric of our days, we inevitably encounter a formidable challenge, one that is unique to our modern era. We live in a world that worships speed. We have been conditioned to expect instant gratification in nearly every aspect of our lives. We have one-click ordering, instant downloads, and global communication in the blink of an eye. We have built a civilization on the promise of immediacy, and in doing so, we have rewired our brains to be profoundly, fundamentally impatient. When the intricate, unpredictable, and often slow-moving reality of life fails to meet this demand for instant results, when the traffic is slow, the website takes too long to load, the person we are speaking to pauses to think we experience it as a personal affront. We feel a surge of frustration, a tightening in the chest, an agitated energy that we have come to accept as normal. This chronic, low-grade impatience is a significant source of stress, anger, and anxiety. It is a constant state of friction with the way things are. The Buddhist path offers a potent antidote to this affliction of hurry. It is the cultivation of a forgotten virtue, a quiet superpower known as kshanti. Kshanti is often translated as patience, but its meaning is deeper and more active than simply passive waiting. It encompasses forbearance, tolerance, and a steadfast endurance. It is the capacity of the mind to remain peaceful, spacious, and undisturbed in the face of delay, difficulty, adversity, and provocation. It is not the grim, white-knuckled endurance of someone gritting their teeth and waiting for a trial to be over. It is a state of active, courageous presence. It is the inner strength to meet the present moment, exactly as it is, with an open and accepting heart, without demanding that it be different. In a world that screams for more, faster, now, the ability to be patient is a revolutionary act of peace. To cultivate patience, we must first understand the anatomy of its opposite. At its core, impatience is a form of aversion, or vyapada, one of the 5 hindrances. It is the mind's angry rejection of the present moment. It is a declaration of war on what is. This feeling is almost always fueled by a rigid attachment to our expectations. We carry around a mental blueprint of how the world should operate. Traffic should flow smoothly. Technology should work perfectly. Other people should respond instantly, and our own progress should be swift and linear. When reality inevitably deviates from our blueprint, this gap between our expectation and the actual situation is where the fire of impatience is kindled. It is a form of subtle arrogance, the implicit belief that the vast, complex universe should conform to our personal timetable. By seeing impatience for what it is, a painful state of reactivity born from clinging to unrealistic expectations, we can begin to loosen its grip. We can see that the problem is not the slow traffic. The problem is our demand that the traffic be fast. The cultivation of shanti can be practiced in 3 main arenas of life, each one offering a unique opportunity for training. The first is patience with situations and conditions. Our daily lives are filled with small frustrations that are perfect training grounds for this practice. The long line at the grocery store, the flight delay, the slow internet connection, the crying baby on the bus, these are not obstacles to our peace. They are the curriculum itself. They are our gymnasium for developing patience. When you find yourself in one of these situations, the first step is to mindfully notice the feeling of impatience arising in your body. Notice the tension, the heat, the agitated energy. Instead of acting on it, tapping your foot, sighing dramatically, pulling out your phone to distract yourself, can you simply be with that energy? Can you breathe into it? The second step is to consciously release the story that is fueling the impatience, the story that begins with, "This shouldn't be happening." And the third step is to practice acceptance. This doesn't mean you have to like the situation. It simply means you stop fighting with the reality of it. You acknowledge, this is what is happening right now, and you allow yourself to be in that reality without the added layer of mental resistance. In these small moments, you are training your mind to be a vessel that can hold discomfort without being capsized by it. The second, and often more challenging, arena is patience with other people. People will inevitably disappoint us. They will be slow, they will make mistakes, they will have different opinions, they will act out of their own pain and confusion. Our default reaction is often one of judgment and frustration. The practice of patience with others is deeply intertwined with the practice of compassion. It is the ability to remember that every other person is also a complex being with their own history, their own struggles, and their own unmet needs. We become more patient with a slow cashier when we consider that she may be exhausted from a long shift or worried about a sick child at home. We become more patient with a partner's annoying habit when we remember their many wonderful qualities and our own imperfections. Patience with others means giving them the space to be human. It is the generous act of extending to them the same grace that we would wish for ourselves in our own moments of weakness. It requires us to listen more than we speak and to seek to understand before we seek to be understood. The third, and perhaps most vital, arena for practice is patience with ourselves. We can often be our own harshest critics, our own most demanding taskmasters. We are impatient with our own healing, frustrated by our own slow progress. We get angry at ourselves for repeating the same mistakes, for falling back into old, unskillful habits. We start a meditation practice and become discouraged when our mind is still wild and scattered after a few weeks. We want enlightenment, and we want it now. Patience with ourselves is a profound form of self-compassion. It is the wisdom to understand that personal growth and spiritual transformation are not linear, efficient processes. They are slow, organic, and often messy, with periods of rapid growth followed by fallow periods of seeming stagnation. To be patient with ourselves is to be a kind and encouraging companion on this long journey. It means celebrating small victories, forgiving our inevitable setbacks, and trusting in the process of cultivation, knowing that with steady, consistent effort, the seeds we are planting will eventually bear fruit in their own time. There is a simple story that illustrates the necessity of this steady, patient effort. A man decided he wanted to dig a well to find water. He picked a spot and began to dig. After digging for an hour and not finding water, he became discouraged. He decided he must have picked the wrong spot, so he moved to another location and started digging a new hole. Again, after a short time, he found no water and gave up, moving to a third spot. He spent the entire day digging a dozen shallow holes all over his land, and at the end of the day, exhausted and frustrated, he declared that there was no water to be found. A wise neighbor came by and told him, "The water is there, but you will never find it by digging so many shallow holes. You must choose one spot and have the patience to dig deep." This is the nature of any worthwhile endeavor. True results do not come from frantic, scattered, and impatient effort. They come from choosing a direction and applying ourselves to it with a consistent, dedicated, and above all, patient heart. Patience is more than just a virtue that makes life more pleasant. It is a prerequisite for wisdom. An impatient mind is an agitated mind. It is reactive, contracted, and too turbulent to see things clearly. It jumps to conclusions and makes decisions based on incomplete information. A patient mind, by contrast, is spacious, calm, and receptive. It has the capacity to wait, to watch, and to allow a situation to unfold before responding. This spaciousness allows for deeper insight to arise. It is in the quiet stillness of the patient heart that we can truly begin to understand the complex causes and conditions that shape our world. Having cultivated this profound inner stability, this ability to remain steady amidst the inevitable frustrations of life, we find that our perspective begins to shift. We are no longer so easily jaded or embittered by our experiences. Patience protects the mind from burnout, allowing it to maintain a sense of freshness and wonder, even when faced with the familiar or the difficult. It allows us to approach each moment not with the weariness of an expert who has seen it all, but with the open and lively curiosity of a beginner. The steady and compassionate practice of patience creates a profound shift in our inner landscape. It calms the turbulent waters of our mind, allowing a deep and spacious stillness to emerge. A mind that is no longer at war with time, no longer demanding that reality conform to its own hurried schedule, becomes resilient and open. This patience acts as a powerful preservative, protecting our heart from the weariness and cynicism that can so easily set in from the constant struggles and disappointments of life. It allows us to carry with us, into every new day, the most precious of all mental qualities, a fresh perspective, an open and curious heart. This is the quality that Zen Buddhism calls Shoshin, or beginner's mind. To understand the immense power of beginner's mind, we must first examine its opposite, the state in which most of us spend our adult lives, the expert's mind. From a young age, we are taught that value lies in knowing. We go to school to accumulate facts, we build careers to accumulate expertise, and we go through life forming solid opinions and beliefs based on our experiences. We construct a vast mental library of what we know about the world, about other people, and about ourselves. This expertise is, of course, useful and necessary for navigating life. But if we are not careful, our own knowledge can become a gilded cage. The expert's mind is, by its nature, a closed mind. It filters every new experience through the dense templates of its past knowledge. When it encounters something new, its first instinct is not to be curious, but to categorize, to label, and to judge based on what it already knows. Its most common and most deadening refrain is, "I already know that." This expert's mind, so full of its own conclusions, loses the capacity to be surprised. It loses the ability to wonder. It walks down a familiar street and sees nothing, for it has already decided it knows everything there is to see. It listens to a loved one speak and hears nothing new, for it is listening only to its preconceived idea of who that person is. This leads to a state of profound boredom and existential ennui, the feeling that there is nothing new under the sun. It fosters cynicism, a protective armor we wear to shield ourselves from disappointment, an armor that also prevents any genuine joy or connection from getting in. The expert mind is rigid, brittle, and ultimately lifeless. It is a mind that has stopped learning, and therefore has stopped truly living. Beginner's mind, or Shoshin, is the radical and liberating antidote to this state. As the Zen master Shunryu Suzuki famously said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's, there are few." Shoshin is the practice of intentionally setting aside our preconceptions, our labels, and our certitudes, and choosing to meet each moment as if for the very first time. It is not a practice of cultivating ignorance or pretending we don't know what we know. On the contrary, the greatest masters in any field are often the ones with the most profound beginner's mind, for they are acutely aware of the vastness of what they do not know. Shoshin is an attitude of profound humility, of open-handed curiosity, and of eager anticipation. It is the ability to look at a flower, a person, or a problem with the wide-eyed wonder of a child who is seeing it for the first time, free from the heavy baggage of past experience. It is the willingness to say, "I don't know," and to find joy and freedom in that not knowing. So how do we cultivate this precious quality in our daily lives? We can apply the lens of Shoshin to every aspect of our experience, transforming the mundane into the miraculous. Let us start with our relationships. Consider the person you know best, a partner of many years, a parent, a sibling. It is likely that you interact not with the actual, living, changing person in front of you, but with a mental projection, a character you have created based on 1,000 past interactions. You already know what they are going to say. You already know their faults and their habits. To apply beginner's mind here is to consciously drop that story. It is to listen to them today with the ears of a stranger, with a genuine curiosity about who they are in this very moment. When you do this, you may be astonished by what you discover. You may hear a nuance in their voice you've never noticed, see a flicker of an emotion you would have otherwise missed, and create an opening for a new and more authentic connection. Let us apply Shoshin to our work. Many of us perform repetitive tasks, and our work can easily become a source of boredom and drudgery. The expert's mind plods through the tasks on autopilot, convinced it knows the best and only way to do them. A beginner's mind, however, approaches even the most familiar task with a fresh curiosity. Is there another way to look at this problem? What assumptions am I making? What if I approach this as a game, as a puzzle to be solved? This is the wellspring of all creativity and innovation. By dropping our assumptions, we open the door to new possibilities that the rigid expert's mind could never have conceived. We find new engagement and even joy in the work we thought had long since grown stale. The most accessible way to practice is to bring Shoshin to our immediate sensory experience. Take, for example, a simple walk around your own neighborhood, a path you have trodden 1,000 times. Today, make the intention to walk it with beginner's mind. Instead of being lost in your thoughts, engage your senses as if you were a tourist from another planet. Notice the specific, intricate pattern of the bark on that tree you pass every day. Look at the sky and see the exact shade of blue or gray that is present today, not the generic idea of sky that you hold in your mind. Listen to the soundscape. Can you distinguish the different types of birdsong? Can you feel the exact sensation of the breeze on your skin? When you do this, the familiar world is reborn. The mundane becomes infused with a vibrant, pulsating life that was there all along, waiting only for your curious attention. You can do this with anything: the experience of eating an apple, of drinking a glass of water, of listening to a piece of music. Shoshin is the key that unlocks the infinite richness of the ordinary. We can even apply this to our own inner world. When a familiar, difficult emotion like anxiety arises, our expert mind immediately kicks in. "Oh, there's that anxiety again," it says with a weary sigh. "I know exactly what this is. It means something bad is going to happen, and I can't handle it." This story only adds fuel to the fire. To meet anxiety with a beginner's mind is to ask, with genuine curiosity, "Hello, old friend. What are you like today? What are the actual raw physical sensations of this experience in my body right now? Is it a vibration, a tightness, a coolness? How is it changing from moment to moment?" By approaching our inner states with this gentle, scientific curiosity, we strip them of their terrifying, monolithic power. We see them not as a solid enemy, but as a fluid, impersonal process. And we take the stale, repetitive nature out of our own inner struggles. There is a famous Zen story that perfectly encapsulates the necessity of this practice. A highly educated university professor, a man renowned for his vast knowledge of philosophy and religion, came to visit a wise old Zen master to inquire about Zen. As the master welcomed him, the professor began to talk, endlessly showing off his own learning, explaining his own theories and opinions about spirituality. After some time, the Zen master politely interrupted him and offered him a cup of tea. As he poured, the professor continued to talk. The master filled the cup to the brim, and then, without pausing, he kept pouring, letting the tea overflow and spill all over the table. The professor, shocked, finally stopped talking and yelled, "The cup is full. It can't hold any more." The Zen master calmly put down the teapot, looked at the professor, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I possibly show you anything about Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This is the central lesson of beginner's mind. To truly learn, to truly experience life, we must be willing to periodically empty our cup. We must have the courage to set aside what we think we know and create a space for something new to enter. To embrace beginner's mind is to embrace the profound joy and freedom of not knowing in a world that is obsessed with certainty. It is the understanding that our opinions are not facts and that our knowledge is always incomplete. It is a state of perpetual openness that keeps our minds flexible, our hearts soft, and our spirits alive. It dissolves the rigid walls of boredom and cynicism and replaces them with a boundless curiosity, a deep-seated gratitude, and a capacity for constant wonder. As we bring this patient, compassionate, and fresh perspective to bear on our entire existence, a final and beautiful transformation occurs. We are at last able to see our lives not as a problem to be solved or a struggle to be endured, but as a miracle to be witnessed. We are finally able to see the light that is not at the end of some long, dark tunnel, but which has been shining brilliantly within and all around us in every single moment, waiting only for us to open our eyes. We have traveled together on a long and winding journey through the inner landscape, a journey that began in the dark and lonely hours of the night. It began with the quiet hum of anxiety, the frantic spinning of a mind trapped in a prison of its own making. It began with the honest and courageous admission that something feels fundamentally amiss in our lives, a deep and pervasive dissatisfaction that no amount of external success or distraction can seem to cure. This is the truth of dukkha, the first noble truth, and in daring to face it without flinching, we took the first crucial step out of denial and into reality. From there, we became detectives of our own hearts, searching for the source of this dis-ease. We discovered it was not the world that was broken, but our own relationship to it. We found the root of our suffering in the insatiable, restless thirst of tanha, the craving mind that is never content, always pulling toward pleasure and pushing away pain. We then saw what fuels this desperate clinging, a profound misunderstanding of the nature of reality itself. We looked deeply and saw the truth of anicca, the law of universal impermanence, realizing that trying to build a permanent home on the shifting sands of life is a futile and exhausting endeavor. We looked even deeper and encountered the most challenging and liberating truth of all, anatta, the insight that there is no solid, separate, unchanging self to be found, freeing us from the immense burden of defending a fragile ego. With our illusions dismantled, we were not left in a void. We were given a map for this new and fluid reality, the Noble Eightfold Path. This path has been our guide, a holistic design for living with wisdom, integrity, and peace. We learned to cultivate right view and right intention, the wisdom that correctly orients us. We committed to right speech and right action, the ethical conduct that creates a foundation of inner and outer harmony. And we have explored the deep inner work of the path. We have learned to cultivate the patient strength of chanti, to find joy in the fresh perspective of shoshin, or beginner's mind, and to navigate our lives with the essential tools of compassion and loving kindness. We have become the farmer of our own mind, learning to distinguish the wholesome seeds from the weeds of the 5 hindrances. We have learned the gentle art of letting go and the brave skill of turning toward our most difficult emotions with the tenderness of a loving parent. After such a journey, we might expect to arrive at some spectacular destination, a final, explosive moment of enlightenment with fireworks and celestial choirs. But for most of us, the culmination of the path is something far more subtle, more gentle, and infinitely more useful. It is not a singular event, but a gradual dawning. It is the slow, steady rising of a new kind of light, a light that does not eradicate the darkness, but allows us to see it, and ourselves, with a new clarity. This dawning is not the acquisition of a new state. It is the cessation of an old one. It is the end of the war. It is the quiet, unconditional ceasefire in our long and bloody battle against reality. It is the moment we finally stop arguing with what is. The difficult emotions may still arise, but we no longer see them as enemies. The world will still present challenges, but we no longer see them as personal affronts. We stop demanding that life give us what we want, and we start learning to appreciate life for what it is. The frantic, anxious striving begins to dissolve, replaced by a deep, abiding sense of peace that is not dependent on circumstances being perfect. It is the profound realization that our well-being was never contingent on fixing the world, but only on healing our own perception of it. We have not escaped the prison. We have simply realized that the door was never locked. This leads us to the most hopeful and profound truth of all, a secret whispered through the ages in the deepest teachings of the path. It is this: the peace, the wisdom, the radiant clarity we have been seeking is not something we need to build, acquire, or achieve. It is our fundamental nature. It is the very essence of our own consciousness. Within every one of us, obscured by the clouds of our conditioning, our fears, and our confusion, there exists a core of pristine, luminous awareness. Some traditions call this Buddha nature, our innate capacity for awakening. You can think of it as your basic sanity, your inherent goodness, or simply the clear sky of your mind. Our entire spiritual practice, all the effort and discipline, has not been about creating this light. It has been about the patient and compassionate work of clearing away the clouds that obscure it. The hindrances of desire, ill will, restlessness, sloth, and doubt are nothing more than temporary weather patterns. They are not who you are. You are the sky, not the clouds. The sky does not fight the clouds. It simply allows them to come and go, remaining vast, open, and untouched by their passing. The moon remains perfectly whole and luminous even on the darkest, most overcast night. We do not need to construct a moon. We only need to develop the patience and stillness to watch the clouds drift by, trusting in the light that is eternally present behind them. There is a final, beautiful image that encapsulates this entire journey from suffering to liberation. It is the image of the lotus flower. The lotus is a symbol of enlightenment, revered across the East, a flower of breathtaking beauty, purity, and fragrance. Its petals open to the sun in a display of perfect, unspoiled grace. But the miracle of the lotus lies not only in its beauty, but in its origins. Where does this pristine flower grow? It grows only in the mud. Its roots are planted deep in the dark, thick, murky, and often foul-smelling sludge at the bottom of a pond. It is from this mud, this darkness, that the lotus draws the very nourishment it needs to push its way up through the murky water and blossom in the clear air and sunlight. This is a perfect metaphor for our own spiritual path. The mud is the dukkha of our lives. It is our anxiety, our trauma, our grief, our anger, our confusion, our failures. The path does not teach us to try and escape the mud, to pretend it doesn't exist, or to wish we were planted in some other, cleaner soil. This is impossible. The mud is the very condition of our human existence. Instead, the path teaches us how to become a lotus. It teaches us to send our roots down into the difficult, messy, painful parts of our own experience, and to transform that very mud into the fuel for our own awakening. Our compassion is born from our own suffering. Our wisdom is born from our own confusion. Our strength is born from our own vulnerability. The lotus does not resent the mud, it uses it. It understands that without the darkness, its own journey toward the light would not be possible. In this way, we learn not to despise the difficulties of our lives, but to see them as the sacred, fertile ground from which our own beautiful, compassionate, and wise heart can finally blossom. And so, we arrive at the dawn. It is not a final destination, but a new way of being. It is a state of living, where peace is not a distant hope, but a present moment possibility. We are no longer lost in the dark, searching for a light at the end of some long tunnel. We have discovered that the light is not at the end of the tunnel. The light is the tunnel. It is the very awareness with which we are experiencing this moment. The long night of the soul, the restless search for something more, has come to an end. We have come home to ourselves, and we find that the peace we were so desperately seeking has been patiently waiting for us here the entire time. We began our journey together in the quiet desperation of the night, lost in a labyrinth of anxiety, wrestling with the shadows in our own minds. We started with the frank acknowledgement of our suffering, the deep and unsettling feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. From that courageous starting point, we embarked on an inner pilgrimage. We became archaeologists of our own hearts, digging down to find the root of our discontent in the relentless thirst for things to be other than they are. We learned to look at reality with new eyes, seeing the ceaseless dance of impermanence and the liberating truth that there is no fixed, separate self to defend. And then, with this new understanding, we began to walk a path, an ancient and practical guide to living. We learned to train our minds, to purify our actions, and to cultivate a heart capable of profound compassion, boundless kindness, and unshakable peace. This has been a journey from being a prisoner of our thoughts to becoming their gentle observer, a journey from being a victim of our emotions to becoming their wise and caring friend. It has been a quiet revolution, a shift from blind reaction to skillful response. If there is one essential truth to take with you from our time together, let it be this: peace is not a destination. It is not a prize to be won at the end of a long struggle, a far-off paradise where all your problems will cease to exist. That place is a fantasy. True and lasting peace is a quality of your own heart. It is an inner resource that can be cultivated, a seed that can be watered, a muscle that can be strengthened, right here in the midst of your messy, beautiful, and imperfect life. The light you have been searching for was never at the end of some dark tunnel. It is the very light of awareness with which you are reading these words right now. The entire journey of the spiritual path is not about becoming someone better or more enlightened. It is the process of unbecoming, of gently letting go of all the layers of fear, conditioning, and confusion that obscure the radiant, peaceful, and compassionate nature that has been your birthright all along. You now have the map. You now have the tools. You now hold the lantern in your own hands. The path forward is not about achieving some state of perfection, but about walking with a sincere and patient heart. There will be days when the clouds of confusion gather again, when the old habits of anxiety and anger feel strong. In those moments, do not be discouraged. Simply remember the practice of self-compassion. Remember to be your own kind friend. Your life, exactly as it is your meditation hall. Every breath is a chance to return to the present moment. Every difficulty is an opportunity to practice. The journey does not end here. It begins anew. In every moment you choose to meet your life with an open, aware, and loving heart. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you live with ease.